Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the evening edition of The Goldie Show, where it's a little bit more chill, a little bit more relaxed. We all grab a drink, we get cozy, we get comfy, and we watch a documentary. Sometimes the documentary is about Iran, sometimes it's about something else. Last night, it was like this weird conspiracy theory about like Mithraism, and we could only get through like the first 47 minutes of it because it was just very, very bizarre. But first of all, I want you guys to let me know what your poison is for tonight. So for tonight, guys, honestly, I should be like a brand ambassador for bubbly at this point because I always like just drink bubblies. So tonight, I have a peach flavored bubbly. I don't know if you can see that. So if you're in the YouTube comments, the YouTube live chat, let me know what your poison is wherever you are around the world. But yeah, like I love bubblies. Small fact about me, I actually have a wine fridge in my apartment, and there's no wine in my wine fridge. It's literally full of just bubblies. Like that's all I have in there. So there you go. All right. So we've got water. I think someone mentioned they're drinking whiskey or something. So oh, coffee. Okay, coffee. There you go. So, anyways, just want to give a big shout out to everyone. Welcome to our channel subscribers. Thank you to all the mods for being here. And of course, a big shout out to all of the channel members who have actually been thoughtful enough to subscribe to my channel to support my content. Really appreciate you guys. It really means a lot to me. Goldie should be sponsored by Coca-Cola. Is Bubbly owned by Coca-Cola? I don't even know. Is Bubbly owned by Coca-Cola? I don't know. I don't think it is. Honestly, I have no idea. I have no idea, but I like it because it's fizzy and it has different flavors and I can drink it guilt free. There you go. Ooh, IPA. Okay. Oh, cream soda, Dr. Pepper. That's delicious. Water. Um, Coffee. All right. Okay. You like prosecco, but you don't drink. I'm sure you could find like alcohol-free prosecco, right? So there you go. Oh, bubbly is owned by Pepsi. Okay, I didn't know that. All right, there you go. There you go. So, okay. All right. So tonight I have another interview with Raymond Ibrahim. I got a lot of positive feedback from everyone about the trigonometry interview that he did, and many of you wanted to see more of him and hear more of him. So uh, I found another documentary, or sorry, I shouldn't call it a documentary, more like just like a podcast conversation talk. This one is from, let me just check here. So this one is from May 11. So it's from earlier on in the year. And the description says historian and author Raymond Ibrahim joins the Winston Marshall Show for a powerful, eye opening conversation on the hidden history of Islam's conquest of the Christian world and why so few dare to speak about it today. Raymond traces the rapid Islamic expansion following Muhammad's death, showing how, within just 1 century, Muslim armies had violently overrun three-quarters of the original Christian world, from Syria and Egypt to Spain and deep into Europe. He dismantles the myth of the Andalusian tolerance, reveals the brutal realities behind the so-called Islamic Golden Age. That's what I'm waiting for. I want to hear about the Islamic Golden Age. Because as I explained in my earlier videos and also the video that I posted yesterday, there's no such thing as the Islamic Golden Age. It's basically the Iranian Golden Age because all the scholars were pretty much Iranian and they were Zoroastrian. And he also explains how the Islamic conquests shattered the Mediterranean world, plunging Europe into the Dark Ages. So that's actually something new that I personally learned yesterday. So up until I saw Raymond's um, discussion about this, and I don't know, maybe it was Robert Spencer who mentioned something briefly, or maybe it was Dr. Bill Moore. I don't know, but it was literally only a few days ago that I actually connected the Dark Ages to jihad, right? Because we learn about the Dark Ages, we learn about the medieval Dark Ages, but we never really talk about what caused it. And so I found that very interesting. So I'm very interested in learning more about this because it does make sense. Okay, I have a few more comments here on what people are drinking tonight. Okay, so Amir's on the coffee train. Ooh, 190 Everclear whiskey. Oh yeah, you sip that. Okay, but Grandview, so the whiskey that you're drinking, so this is where I'm going to judge you based on your answer. Are you sipping that whiskey on ice, like on the rocks, or are you sipping it neat? And based on your answer, I will judge you. So let me know. No pressure. Never heard of bubbly. We don't have it in the UK. Bush, Bush Light. I don't know what Bush Light is. I've never heard of that. So, um, okay. Um, okay. Divorce lawyer. Oh wow, that's a mouthful. Divorce lawyer asks, how could Islam grab Iran completely, but not India? That's because Iran was, right there at the border, and the Persian Empire had been weakened by a 30-year war with the Byzantine Empire. And because they were so weakened, that's how Islam and the Arab Muslim invaders were able to go in. And yeah, so that's I'm sure Raymond's going to talk about this, but the short answer in a nutshell is that yeah, it was because the Persian Empire was severely weakened by the Byzantines. But if you look at the history of jihad map, it all didn't happen overnight. It still took like a couple of decades, but yeah, that's how it happened. Um, okay, so Pepsi. What else do we got here? Um, oh, you like drinking Arok? We love it here in Lebanon. I tried Arok one time. I don't know, the taste was too strong for me. Um, because it's got like that licoricey aftertaste to it, and I'm not a fan of licorice. So, beer, tap water. Oh, Bush is American beer. Okay. Um, all right. I think I caught up. Oh, cardamom tea. There you go. Cardamom tea. All right. I like that too. All right. Okay, guys. So let's get started here. I hope, I've given you all a little bit of time to get settled in, grab your drinks. Um, let's go. And yeah, this is basically sort of a learning thing for me. So for those of you who haven't joined my evening live streams before, the purpose of my evening live streams is basically to just, I mean, these are things that I would be watching on my own anyway, and then I just figured might as well do a live stream while I'm watching them so other people can join me. And of course, if there's interest, I'll continue. I've been doing this for a couple of months now because there is a lot of interest from people. So yeah, there you go. This is just sort of a chill watch party, and there you go, learning experience. All right, let's get started. I'm actually really excited for this.
Islamist attack after Islamist attack, how we might find social cohesion today in Europe.
We got to go back to the beginning, to Muhammad. Now, here's the first interesting thing that few people understand. From 632, the year Muhammad died, 1 century later, 732, Muslims are now in the middle of Europe, fighting and abducting people and destroying churches. They found what they want to claim is this great time of tolerance and beauty, but they're acting like ISIS on steroids. They symbolically were trying to denigrate Christianity, but we don't talk about that. In 1 century from Muhammad's death, they conquered 3/4 of the original Christian world permanently. This is what's building up towards the First Crusade.
So then let's go to the Crusades.
You hear the word crusade, it's such a diabolical, evil thing, evil venture. Now, what they don't tell you, okay, is one, that's how effective they've been. They've gotten that narrative to become dominant.
Maybe we just stick with 2025 and what's happening. We've had some reports from Congo, Nigeria.
I think every week I have to read about dozens of Christians being killed. And of course the media, they tell you, no, this is about climate change.
But they actually do that.
I've noticed, and I've been following this and writing about it a lot, Muslim persecution of Christians has been.
Just a quick note. So for those of you who were who joined me or watched my live streams about the Muslim genocide of Christians in Nigeria, if you recall, when Zari Yusuf, who's a Nigerian Christian, joined us, he actually exposed and spoke about this, excuse that the globalists and the Islamists use when it comes to the Muslim genocide of Christians. He called out the fact that they'll like blame the violence on climate change. And so he was saying that, he thinks, and I kind of agree with him, he thinks that one of the reasons that this whole fake crisis of like, man-made climate change or whatever has been brought up so much is because that provides cover for the Islamists to continue their jihad, but then hide behind the excuse of climate change. Because I don't know about you guys, but the last time I thought about this, like I've never heard of at any point in the history of human civilization, people being murdered because of climate change. And yet somehow, when Muslims murder Christians, the UN blames that on climate change. Like it's very, very bizarre. So I just want to point that out. I have heard about this excuse before. We've spoken about it, and especially in my podcasts about the Nigerian genocide, we definitely spoke about that and exposed it.
One of those most no topics. We don't want to go there.
Make it relevant to what's going on in that, because you've sort of given a historical context.
In Germany, Muslims are going to be like 40% of the population. I mean, at that point, yeah, it's going to be like.
Raymond, Ibrahim, thank you so much for coming to speak with me on this show. There's 2 topics I'm keen to get into with you. You've done an amazing documentation of the persecution of Christians by Muslims in Africa and around the world, and you've been doing that for some time. You're also a prolific historian, documenting not only Islam in Europe but Islam around the world. Before we get into those things, I wondered if you could tell me a little bit about yourself and tell viewers a bit about yourself, and also why you call yourself cancelled on your YouTube bio.
Well, thanks, Winston. It's great to be with you. A little bit background on myself is I'm of Egyptian.
Sorry, I just have to pause there. The reason I laughed when he said, it was mentioned that he calls himself canceled. I was literally canceled by the National Council of Canadian Muslims and Doug Ford and the Ontario PC Party because I was speaking out against radical Islam. So to me, it's just very interesting to see that anyone from the Middle East, North Africa region, who raises awareness about radical Islam and Islamic terrorism and jihad, it's like we all get the same treatment. So there you go. Like if you go to my YouTube profile, it says, wait, what did I say? I think I said like proud Islamophobic or something. I don't know. Wait, let me see what I said on my. I don't use the word canceled, but what I say on my YouTube channel is, here we go. What I say on my YouTube channel is proudly accused of Islamophobia for exposing Islamic radicalism and anti Semitism in Canada. So there you go. It's just interesting to see that these jihadis use the same tactics against anyone who is speaking about the truth in the Middle East. Anyways, all I want to say. Let's continue.
Heritage descent, Coptic specifically. My family left Egypt, I think, in the very late 60s. I was born here, 73. And so it kind of gave me an advantage. I was bilingual. I grew up speaking Arabic, of a certain dialect anyway. Then I studied it formally in English. And obviously I had an interest in sort of the nexus of Western civilization and Islam because of my Christian background. I sort of gravitated to Western civilization, obviously. But I was very familiar with Islam and Egypt and my family and the background. So I've always been interested in that. And then in college, I actually majored in history with a focus on, actually, I started off with classics, but then I delved into the Middle Ages, medieval Islam, and Byzantium, Eastern Roman Empire. And, you may know the name Victor Davis Hanson. He was my professor, actually, way back then. And we're still good friends. He writes forewords for my books. Great guy. But, he also got me interested in military history because before he became the prolific commentator about everything, he was a military historian. And so my master's thesis was about the first major battle between Christian Muslim armies. Major battle, the Battle of Yarmouk in 636. So that was my MA thesis. And then since then, I've been I continued being very interested in the history, but then long story short, after 9/11, I went to Georgetown University and I was accepted there. And I also attended a PhD program, but I ended up leaving. I had straight A's because I got a full-time job at the Library of Congress. And then I got a major book deal. My first book was The Al-Qaeda Reader. I actually came across writings by Al-Qaeda in early 2000 when I was working at the Library of Congress that had not even been cataloged. So that was turned into my first book that came out. And that's why, because of all that full-time job and writing a book, I essentially couldn't. I was also told, Victor Hanson made a good point. He told me, if, you already got what most people who are trying to get a PhD want, okay, like book deals. And you're also at a point with what you've said and the position you've taken. Even if you get a PhD, nobody's going to hire you.
Yeah.
Because they're all left-wing universities and they don't want your views there. So that was another reason for me not to even bother with it. And then soon after, around 2008 or 9, I essentially resigned from the Library of Congress. It was a great job. I was like a kid in a playground because I had access to all these very arcane, esoteric books. But and I've been a fellow at various think tanks since then, including the Gatestone Institute, the Middle East Forum. I was for a while at the Hoover Institute, etc. And that's it. Since then, I've also kind of gravitated back to my original academic interests, which is history. So my more recent books, one of them in 2013, I wrote Crucified Again, Exposing Islam's New War on Christians, which pertains to what we'll be talking about. It's about the persecution of Christians in the modern era. And then in 2018, I wrote Sword and Scimitar, 14 Centuries of War Between Islam and the West, which you might call my magnum opus, because it's like, this is what I was studying for over 20 years. It's the continuation of the Battle of Yarmouk. So that's chapter 1, Battle of Yarmouk. And then I go through all the other major encounters and wars all the way up until America's first war with Islam. Its first war as a nation, actually, the Barbary Wars. And that book's done very well, and it's been very controversial. I was invited by the U.S. Army War College to give a talk about it. And then, I don't know if you know CARE, the Council on, they went ballistic. And
the
Council on American and Islamic Relations, which is like a brotherhood wing, and
Muslim Brotherhood.
Yeah, Muslim Brotherhood. And they actually got me, they shamed the U.S. Army War College in rescinding my invitation.
Did they?
By calling them racist, and I was a racist and a white supremacist.
So, CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, by the way, it's being now labeled as a terrorist organization in Florida and Texas. And my understanding is the United States is working towards doing like a total ban on it because CARE is linked to the Muslim Brotherhood. So it's really interesting because CARE in the United States went after him and basically tried to cancel him, right? The Canadian version of CARE, which is called the National Council of Canadian Muslims, did the exact same thing to me. So I hope you guys start to see a pattern here with how these like Islamist jihadi organizations operate. However, what I can say is that the fact that the National Council of Canadian Muslims tried to cancel me is probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because if anything, it freed me, because when I was still an elected official, I still had to be sort of politically correct and, whatever. But now that I'm a private citizen, I literally have the freedom to say whatever I want, however I want. I don't have to answer to anyone. I don't have to apologize to anyone. And the fact that the National Council of Canadian Muslims accused me of Islamophobia just for speaking out against radical Islam and jihad, the same way that they're going after Raymond Ibrahim in the United States, that's actually given me credibility. And I just want to thank the National Council of Canadian Muslims, because I know they monitor me. I know they're like constantly like watching all my videos because they're trying to like find a way to like do like a defamation lawsuit or something against me. So I just want to give a big shout out to the National Council of Canadian Muslims. Thank you so much for freeing me from the shackles of politics and political correctness. Because of you guys, my social media accounts are blowing up, no pun intended. Yeah, I'm actually really, really enjoying this, and I'm getting a lot of support. And so the fact that you tried to cancel me, if anything, made it so that more people pay attention and listen to me. And now, you guys are pretty much almost on the chopping block. So there you go. All right, let's just continue.
And it was just so childish and immature, but the U.S. Army War College basically buckled. But the good news is, a lot of people, when some media reported on it, a lot of people actually came on my side and totally shamed them. And parents wanted to withdraw their kids out of it. And several congressmen sent a letter to Trump about it. And then, all kinds of organizations got in, so they re-invited me.
Uncancelled.
And yeah, I was uncancelled. And if anything, they told me it was the second largest event since a Buzz Aldrin event they had. Thanks to CARE
right.
for creating all that controversy. Everyone wanted to see what this is about, right?
All publicity is good publicity,
exactly.
It turns out.
Yeah, so that's a little aside. And then the other book I wrote, which is also very popular, also historical, is Defenders of the West, the Christian Heroes Who Stood Against Islam, where I just look at 8 biographies of kings and warriors and warlords who actually fought against Islam. And people really like it because it's such a different story than what you're told. One of them is Dracula, Vlad Tepes, Vlad the Impaler, who of course is the most demonized, and people are like, how would you put him in the book? But if you look at the sources, yeah, he identified as a Christian, Orthodox, and he fought against Islam. And he was basically the impalement, and we can even get into that. That was his way of, it was a tit for tat. That's what they were doing. He learned that as a hostage of the Ottomans, the Turks. He watched them impale his own people. So this was his own way of fighting them back. Anyway, and that gives you an idea.
That's very interesting, because we've already seen a lot of examples of historical revisionism when it comes to the Arab Muslim conquests, and how even though we know that they were the invaders and they were the hostile ones, they've tried to like rewrite history to demonize anyone who um, fought back against them or stood up to them. So I did not know this about Vlad the Impaler. So very, very interesting that he's saying that basically what Vlad the Impaler did, he learned from the Muslims who were murdering him, like his people. So there you go. This is why I like watching these documentaries, because I always learn something new, especially when it comes to history.
Idea of so much of what I try to do is give context and correctives to what we think we know about history, and a lot of it we don't, like the Crusades. A lot of people, think the Crusades, okay, these are evil ventures, white supremacists going to colonize some poor nation, and it's completely different, and we'll probably get into that.
Well, the Crusades are back in the news because Pete Hegseth
Yeah.
has got a crusade cross blazoned across his
right.
chest.
And I've spoken a lot about that, but he's in the news more recently for another tattoo. He's in the news always for his tattoos, an Arabic tattoo of the word kafir, which means it's usually translated as infidel, but it means non-Muslim, but it has all these negative associations with it.
So it's a pejorative.
It's a complete pejorative. I mean, it's synonymous with subhuman, enemy, God hates you, we should kill you. That's what the word means. But it gets translated in English Qurans as unbeliever, very neutral sounding. So anyway, and it's funny, why are Muslims angry that he has the word kafir in on? He's an infidel, right? That's what Islam makes him. But they're angry because he's proud of it. You're a kafir, you should be embarrassed and ashamed. But he's flaunting it. He has it as a tattoo. He has it as a badge of honor, literally.
Do we know when he got that tattoo?
No, I don't know, and I don't know if anyone does, because every time we see these tattoos, he doesn't talk about them. They just capture some weird picture of him, and you can see a tattoo, and then they start talking about the tattoo because they finally saw it. So I don't know.
Right, maybe he's been reading your books.
Maybe, yeah, maybe. But anyway, that recaps it with me. So, and then since then, I've just writing my books, and I'm still a fellow at think tanks. I'm writing articles, and I'm trying to develop my YouTube channel, trying to do what you do, and very modestly at this point, which is.
He's actually doing a really, really good job, guys. Do you follow him on YouTube? You guys need to. Let me just. I think he has like, I don't know. Wait, I don't even know how many subscribers he has. I mean, I follow him. I subscribe to him. Okay, so he has 118,000 subscribers right now, Raymond Ibrahim. But his videos are getting like tens of thousands, sometimes, actually no, they're not getting that many views. I mean, some of his videos do get a lot of views, but he doesn't, like, this guy should have like hundreds of millions of subscribers, and yet he only has 118,000. So yeah, everyone needs to go subscribe. Here, let me just show you what his YouTube channel looks like here. Let me remove the video. There you go. So that's Raymond Ibrahim's channel. I'm just going to put it in the YouTube live chat as well, so you guys can see it. But yeah, go subscribe. Go subscribe. Like he's got some fantastic videos there. So, all right. A little plug for him. Okay, let's continue.
It's fun. It's amazing to me because when I write an article, and even if it appears in pretty good websites, you can tell how many views there are via comments, maybe 20 comments, 30 comments. But I make a little video on YouTube and there's like 300 comments. Yeah. So, I guess that's the way to go. More people are interested in watching than reading. It's a generational thing, and I'm happy to oblige.
Well, look, you've mentioned the Battle of Yarmouk twice, and perhaps before we go into what's going into Europe, maybe this is the starting point. So what's happened at the Battle of Yarmouk then?
The interest to me in the Battle of Yarmouk is it's the genesis of the conflict between Christendom and Islam. That's really its significance. And so basically, we got to go back to the beginning, to Muhammad, right? Muhammad's dead, 632, and now you have what's called the Ridda Wars, which is after he died, a lot of Arabian tribes tried to break away from the fold of Islam. And the first Caliph Abu Bakr launched these apostasy wars, which is very interesting because even till this day, Muslim clerics will tell you without the law of apostasy, which is you kill anyone who tries to leave Islam, Islam would have died out. I mean, they actually say that, they admit it. That's why we have to have the apostasy law, because if people have freedom to leave, it will be gone.
So those are the culture of apostasy, punishing apostasy, didn't exist before then under Muhammad.
No, it did. He's the one who
did, yeah.
Yeah, it goes to a hadith, a statement attributed to him, which is considered canonical in Sahih Bukhari, where he says literally, whoever leaves his religion, meaning Islam, kill him.
Mm-hmm.
So that was always part of the religion, according to that teaching, that hadith, and that's why it's still there.
Okay, so by the second generation of Muslim leaders, they're now codifying that. And
yeah, well, when and how Islamic law gets codified is kind of a controversial thing, depending on which version you want to go to. But most of it happens much later after Muhammad. Maybe like he dies 632. Really, the first writings and the hadith are maybe around 750. And this is why there's a school of thought that says Muhammad never existed and it was all fabricated later to give a hagiographical foundational story to the Umayyad Empire. But at any rate, so you have now the Muslim power is consolidated under Abu Bakr, and then later the other Caliph Omar, who are companions and friends of Muhammad. And now the jihad is waged in earnest. Now, here's the first interesting thing that few people understand. In 632, if I talk to someone, your average person, and I talk about the Middle East or North Africa, and they know it's Muslim, they don't know how it got Muslim. They think it's always been Muslim. In the dawn of Islam, during this time that I'm discussing, 632.
Yeah, can I just point out, like, it's so weird because it's like everyone knows that Jesus was born in Bethlehem, which is in Israel. Israel is in the Middle East. But yet at the same time, everyone just assumes that the Middle East has been Muslim forever, even though it's literally not the case. So, yeah, there is like this cognitive dissonance when it comes to um, people's knowledge about history when it comes to the Middle East. So I just want to point that out.
And so forth. The Eastern world, nor Egypt, Greater Syria, as it was called, which encompassed modern day Israel, Jordan, Lebanon. It was a big chunk. Anatolia, or Turkey, what we call Turkey. And like I said, Egypt, all the way down to Morocco, Mauritania, and Augustine's Hippo was there in Tunisia. All that was actually more Christian than Europe. So if you talked about Christianity at the dawn of Islam, you were talking about Egypt, you were talking about Syria, you're talking about Asia Minor, Greece, of course, and Europe. But Europe was actually less Christian. And of course, anything northwest of the Danube Rhine was still not even Germany. The Scandinavian lands hadn't even reached Christianity at that point. And this is why the Roman Emperor Constantine moved the capital of Rome, New Rome, Constantinople, to the east, because that's where everything was. That's where the learning was. That's where the sophisticated culture was, the wealth. All right. And again, people, we have records of people traveling through Egypt, and they say all we heard from the top of the Nile to the bottom is just hymns and church bells, etc. This is before Islam. Same thing with Syria. Okay. So people miss this context. This is what the Middle East was. If you wanted to talk about Christianity, there were 5 major centers. Okay. They call them Sees. One was Rome, and the other 4 were in the Middle East. Okay. One was Alexandria, one was Antioch, one was Jerusalem, and then later Constantinople, all east, and all conquered by Islam, okay, which we'll get into. So anyway, we have the first major attack, and we have the Battle of Yarmouk in 636, and the Muslims prevail.
Where is Yarmouk?
Yeah, Yarmouk is a river in Syria, or it was in Greater Syria at the time, so I don't know if it's in part of Jordan now, but I'm pretty sure it's in Syria still. And that's where the 2 major armies, the Eastern Roman Empire, which they call Byzantium. I sort of don't like that word because it sort of creates a discontinuity between the Roman Empire. They saw themselves as Romans. Even the Arab accounts call them Romans, so this word Byzantine, anyway, but it's short, it's easy, it's succinct. So I interchange them. But the Eastern Roman Empire, basically, and the Arabs, the Muslims, fought there, and it was a major epic confrontations, and the Christians lost. And for various reasons, among it, there was a desert storm, which they weren't used to fighting in, whereas the Arabs were. And it takes on a great, it's very hagiographical tradition amongst Arabs. This is where it all begins, and this is where our Allah proved he was for us because we beat the infidels, etc., etc. And I won't get into it, but anyone who's interested really should read about the battle, because a lot of what ISIS, the Islamic State, the stuff they would say, which sort of sounds cryptic and people didn't understand it, they would say things like, "We've tasted American blood, and none is sweeter," and people just thought they're being gross. Actually, they were quoting characters from the Battle of Yarmouk, Muslim heroes, specifically Khalid bin al-Walid, known as the Sword of Allah, who said to the Romans, "We've tasted
I just want to say we have a new member. So welcome, Eric Lynn, to Goldie's Gang. I hope you're enjoying the live stream. I hope you're enjoying the channel. And stay tuned, because I actually do members only live streams. Those are during the day, though. So I have my daily podcast, The Goldie Show, where I talk about all things Middle East, politics, jihad. Oh, you watch me on TikTok. Oh my gosh, you're here from TikTok. Okay, so Eric, since you are here from TikTok, this one's for you. So Iranian here with another pro tip for anyone who's not from the Middle East. If you want more content, follow me on YouTube. There you go. Thank you so much, Eric. Welcome from TikTok. Great to have you here. And keep an eye out, because I do members only live streams on YouTube after my usual daily show. So my daily show happens at 12 noon Eastern, goes for about 2 hours. And then at 2 p.m. Eastern, I do a members only live stream. So stay tuned for that. Also, check out my members only message board on YouTube as well. Anyways, welcome. So nice to see people from TikTok here. Yeah. Guys, for those of you who don't follow me on TikTok or don't use TikTok, I'm kind of a big deal on TikTok. I'm kind of like, don't look at my YouTube numbers, guys, because I've only recently become active on YouTube, and I've only recently tried to start growing my channel on YouTube. So, it's been growing a lot, and I really do appreciate that. But guys, like on TikTok, I'm basically like a big deal. Like, look at this. I don't know if you can see that. I have 372,000 followers on TikTok. So just say. But yeah, anyways, welcome, Eric. Thanks for being here. Always great to see new members and new subscribers. And yeah, like I definitely do more like long form content on YouTube. So you'll see a lot more info here. Oh, Bama Squirrel, you are from TikTok as well. Okay. Wow, there's a lot of TikTokers here, guys. There you go. The TikTokers are the OGs. So, all right. Okay, let's continue here.
Roman blood, and none is sweeter. All right. So when a lot of the things they would say is actually from that battle and other battles as well, but that's how these battles and major confrontations with the Christian world where they prevailed still.
Oh, sorry, I was just gonna say. So for those who don't have TikTok, you're not missing out. Everything I post on TikTok, I pretty much post on YouTube. In fact, I actually post more content on YouTube. So if you're only following me on YouTube, you're good. Although I would probably recommend, if you have X, follow me on X as well, because I do a lot of like text posts on X, and things that I don't put on YouTube.
Figure very prominently in their historical consciousness, whereas to most Westerners, they have no clue, right?
Yeah.
So at any rate, the battle happens. The West, the Christians lose, and now begins the great takeover of the Middle East. All right, Egypt, which was a major center for the Roman Empire, gets conquered 4 years later, right, or 5 years, around 640, 641. And they continue marching all the way west until they get to Morocco around 690. They take over Carthage, where and Augustine and Hippo, so all these major centers, and in Syria as well, completely conquered. Jerusalem is conquered 1 year after Yarmouk. All right, it's like a complete domination.
Oh, okay. So I just want to pause because we have a super chat in YouTube. So Doraemon says, "Good evening, Goldie. I've heard a lot about this thing in Islam called, well, it's taqiyya, or taqiyya, as we pronounce it in Persian, in Farsi. So taqiyya is basically just lying. Raymond Ibrahim actually spoke about taqiyya in the podcast that we watched earlier today, he might speak about it in this podcast, but if he doesn't, then I will make a separate video about it. Taqiyya is basically the Islamic doctrine that you are allowed to lie about anything, pretend, anything. You're even allowed to lie and say something like you're not Muslim, if it is for the purposes of advancing like jihad and Islam. So yeah, that's basically what taqiyya is. Um, I have made a short video on the persecution of Yazidi. Like one of my Iranian here videos actually does talk about the Yazidi genocide, but I will make a note here and I will definitely make like a short video about the Yazidi genocide. More than happy to do that. I don't think it is talked about enough, and not a lot of people know about the Yazidi genocide. And something that was actually really really horrifying for me is that during the whole Hamas Israel conflict, where Hamas terrorists were and also Palestinian civilians were attacking Israel. During that whole conflict, the IDF actually found and like a young Yazidi girl in Gaza who had been taken there by a Palestinian. And I find that absolutely wild that they're actually like a, a society exists that is so savage and so barbaric that when like an old man randomly shows up with an 11-year-old girl and says, "This is my wife," no one questions him, right? Like, I mean, like if let's say my next door neighbor was gone for a few years and then all of a sudden just showed up and he had like, an 11-year-old girl with him and he's like, "This is my wife." I would call the cops right away. And yet no one in Gaza, upon seeing this old man show up with an 11-year-old girl, no one thought that maybe this is strange, maybe something's not right. Yeah, so but people don't talk about this. People don't talk about this. They just say, "Oh, the Palestinians are oppressed." No, they're a bunch of like savage jihadis, and there's a reason that no Middle Eastern country in the world wants them. But I will definitely make a video on the Yazidi genocide for sure. Absolutely, I don't think it gets enough attention, and my heart goes out to all the Yazidi people. Thank you for the support. Okay, let's continue.
Effect. And there's theories of why this is. One of them is that the Byzantine Empire was very weakened at the time, but also the Muslims enter and conquer Persia, the Sasanian Empire at the time. Okay, and now now Iran's been conquered, and they continue eastward. But for brevity's sake, I'll continue focusing on the Western Christian world. And so now, from 632, the year Muhammad died, 1 century later, 732, Muslims are now in the middle of Europe, fighting and abducting people and destroying churches.
Not just the middle of Europe. I mean, as far north as Tours in France.
That's why that's the date. 732 is the Battle of Tours, which is right in the heart of France. Spain has been conquered since 711. Okay, now after they took over Morocco, now they sailed into Spain, and that was completely conquered and devastated. And now they're in the middle of France, okay, attacking, and this is the Battle of Tours. So in 1 century from Muhammad's death, and historians have actually quantified it, but it's basically they conquered 3/4 of the original Christian world permanently.
Wow.
In Spain, not permanently, but for.
Oh wow. So okay, like some person comes in and they're like, "Is this a pro-Israel channel? I thought it was Persian." So from the spelling of your name, obviously you're not Iranian. So anyone who knows anything about the history of Iran and Israel knows that all Iranians are pretty much pro-Israel. The only Iranians who are not pro-Israel are the traitors who support the terrorist Islamic Republic. So, yeah, this is 100% an Iranian channel. And that's why this is also a pro Israel channel, because the history of Iranian people and Israeli people and Jews goes back thousands of years, well before Islam was invented. And a bunch of jihadi terrorists cannot erase the allyship and friendship that Iranians and Jews have had for thousands of years. So yeah, this is definitely a Persian channel. That's why we are pro-Israel and pro-Jew. And happy Hanukkah to all the Jewish people who are watching.
For like 8 centuries they were there, and of course in France they still continued depredations, and the Mediterranean islands were all conquered around the 8th century. Sicily and Malta and all of them, Cyprus and Rhodes, for centuries. And again, it's, to me, I'm just baffled at how people don't understand these were not just Christian countries. These were the main Christian countries, and they just got conquered and Islamized, and nobody knows this. If you talk about those countries now, like Egypt or Syria, most people just have this vague notion they were always Muslim, and Islam spread there. No. And again, if you look at the sources, both the Arabic and Islamic and the European chronicles, they make it unequivocally clear this was violent bloodshed, conquest. And it's even worse in the Arabic recordings because they boast about it. The more violent it is, and the more, the atrocities committed against the Christian infidels, and the more churches destroyed, this is more a reflection of how pious the Muslim conquerors were. So it's actually worse in the Arab. I always find this amazing that it's more graphic sometimes than the European ones, which are a little more objective. They say, yes, we were attacked and thousands were butchered and enslaved in churches. But the Muslim ones revel in it. Okay. And so now let's just stop for a moment. None of this is being taught in any school at all.
Can I just ask, do you have a sense of the death toll in that first century?
No. I mean, unfortunately, 7th century is what we're talking about. We're lucky to have just the records that we have. But, and I know I put it in Sword and Scimitar where I talk about various regions that get conquered, and then some chronicle mentions a number. Okay. But it's very hard. It's very sketchy that time. I mean, we're now nearing to what traditionally was called the Dark Ages, because we have, which, by the way, and we can get into, is a product of Islam. Okay. And when many people don't know this, and since I'm at it, okay, we're almost there. So basically, after what happened and so the Mediterranean used to be known as kind of the Roman lake, and everyone, Egypt and Syria and all of North Africa and Europe, were all connected. It was part of one empire. After Islam took everything basically south of that, North Africa and the Middle East, and I already told you that was the richer, more profound, the more sophisticated region. Little Europe, the rest of the Christian was cut off completely. Papyrus ended. It used to come from Egypt. That supply was eliminated. All of that is historically, was the beginning of what historians would call the Dark Ages. Okay. And you don't know, I mean, and one historian,
so I actually just saw someone in the comments who's apparently triggered that we're talking about the history of jihad, and then this person is like, let me remind you of the Crusades. He can't even spell remind properly, first of all. But anyway, so I also wanted to say this is not only a pro-Iran, pro-Israel channel, this is also a pro-Crusade channel. So if you haven't seen my video about the Crusades, go watch that. So yeah, you can remind me about the Crusades all you want. I think the Crusades were justified, and yeah, this is definitely a pro-Crusade channel as well. Yeah, 100%. People need to go and learn the history. Oh, we have a new member. Okay, Wyatt. Wyatt, thank you for becoming a member and for joining the channel. I hope you enjoy. Welcome.
Henry Perrin. He was, I think, a Belgian historian in the 19th century, an Orientalist, as they called them. He actually had an entire thesis about this. And basically his line is, without Muhammad, there'd be no Charlemagne. The rise of Charlemagne and the Frankish state was basically a response to the nonstop Islamic aggression and and the discontinuity of the Mediterranean. This is why now Europe had to develop on its own and start anew. And it was, it was the young kid on the block, the barbarians who had, conquered and assimilated into Christendom in the 5th century and whatnot. They no longer had the assistance of the East as they did before. Okay. And so now they became the small final bastion of Christendom. and they continued being attacked by Muslims. So, to finish this idea of the Dark Ages, so that's, yeah, so people will tell you the Dark Ages historic, and they don't even want to use that term anymore for various reasons, but they would say it was the 8th century and the 9th century. And they would tell you because of Viking attacks and, attacks from nomadic tribes in the east. But the real attack was Islam. Okay. That was the main one from the south. And the Vikings, people don't even understand that a lot of the Viking raids, especially for slaves, okay, white slaves, was to feed the Arab slave emporium because there was such a demand for white slaves.
So they were selling, Vikings were selling
they would
slaves
go to
from
Ireland and England and France and wherever and conquer. And all those slaves, most of them would be sold down through the rivers of Russia to the caliphates, the Abbasids, for example, the Abbasid Caliphate. That used to be a well-known thing. And we know this as well because a lot of the treasure troves of Viking coins that are found in Scandinavia are Arab coins. So what commodity do Vikings have to give? Slaves. And we
Wow.
also have records for it. So, the whole point is Islam has had a profound impact on the shaping of Europe. And there's historians, I quote one in one of my books, something Cardini, where he basically says Islam was a midwife to Europe. It created Europe. And the reason Europe became martial and you had the night culture and everything and a very staunch Christian kind of defensive posture was because of Islam. It was surrounding it, and they knew what happened. They understood that 3/4 of Christendom was destroyed and conquered and Islamized.
Huh.
So
Wow.
this is we haven't even reached the Crusades, okay? And look what Islam had done. And I'm here to tell you, because I've looked at this, and parents write to me about school books, textbooks, and social science books. What I just described to you doesn't even get any mention. You just get one sentence about how Islam spread through trade in the Middle East, and they won't tell you the Middle East was so Christian before that. They always like to act.
Seeing a couple of comments here, so I just want to share them. So, Dwayne says, people will damn the truth and die for a lie 100%. And, Raymond actually, he's literally just talking about that right now, where he's saying, you don't hear about any of this in the textbooks. All you hear is that Islam spread through trade, or, through peace, which makes no sense. So, yeah, Islam didn't spread through trade. It spread through jihad. It spread through rape, murder, cutting people's heads off and forcing people to convert. So there you go. TFDX. Something crazy is happening in Iran. What are your thoughts on the mass conversions to Christianity under the regime? So, Christianity is the fastest growing religion in occupied Iran. Zoroastrianism is the second fastest growing. We don't know the numbers because the crime for apostasy, under Islam and Sharia law is death. And so the Islamic Republic, claims that like 99% of Iran is Muslim because literally everyone is forced to put their religion on their passport. And so 99% of people have to put Muslim. And so even though the vast majority are not, they're basically pretend Muslims. So we don't actually know the number of people who have converted to Christianity. I would say, given the current appetite in Iran, and Iranians, like, they're just sick. Like, we are just sick of religion. We're sick and tired of anything to do with it. And everyone, just wants something really private, right? Like, no one wants to talk about religion in public. So there are a lot of Iranians who are just agnostic or atheist because they're just sick and tired of dealing with Islam. But the reason that Christianity is one of the fastest growing religions in occupied Iran is because Christianity just has a completely different message from Islam, right? So Islam is all about like death and martyrdom, and if you don't do this, you're going to die. It's about killing, infidels, all that jihadi nonsense. Whereas Christianity is more about Jesus dying for your sins and, love and, all that kind of stuff. I'm not Christian, so I'm not going to like comment on it too much, but that's why Christianity resonates a lot more with Iranians, but I would say the vast majority of Iranians are atheist or agnostic. Less than 20% of Iranians today are actually practicing Muslim. And there's a lot of Iranians in the chat. They can give you some input and insight on that as well. But yeah, I mean, we don't know the figures when it comes to Christianity because again, the crime for apostasy is death. And just recently in the news, there was there was news about some Christians who had recently converted from Islam to Christianity in occupied Iran, and they have actually been jailed because, again, leaving Islam is a crime. People are asking me if I'm Muslim. No, I'm not Muslim. Stop asking me that. I'm not Muslim. Um, there you go. So TFDX, I hope that answers your question. I mean, again, less than 20% of Iranians are Muslims. So, I mean, if you ask an Iranian if they're Muslim, like 80% of the time they're going to say no. So there you go.
Like Europe was Christian and everything else wasn't. No, Europe was the leftover portion of Christendom that never got conquered. Portions of it did, Spain and the Balkans later under the Ottomans, and we'll get into that. But yeah, so this is, I'll stop
So why,
right
why do
there.
you think that they were so successful in so quickly conquering so much?
Yeah, there's a lot of theories about that. The one which I touched on is, the Roman Empire and the Persians were at war right before the Islamic conquest, literally like a decade or two. They were constantly bleeding each other. So one theory is that they were both so exhausted that when this new power rose up in Arabia, they were able to just conquer them piecemeal. So that's one. The Muslim theory is God's on our side, and this is proof, and this is why we won. The ancient Christian, the contemporary Christian theory, this is how people always thought. They thought we were sinners. And so, God had raised Amalek against us, or whatever the Old Testament analogy is. He's raised some kind of pagan people to attack the believers, the Hebrews, and punish them and chastise them for their evil ways. So that comes out regularly amongst the Christian.
Do you think that there's anything in the culture of Christianity that...
Yeah, well, that's the Edward Gibbon argument, okay, which is basically that, because of Christianity, it sort of emasculated the martial ethos of the Roman Empire, and it made...
Wait, I see in the comments, presidential address to the nation. Trump is speaking. Is he speaking about something relevant? I know that he made a statement yesterday. He's speaking about the war on Venezuela. Do you guys want me to switch to that? Do you want me to switch to the Venezuela war? All right, you know what? No, you don't want me to switch? All right, okay. All right, I won't do it then. The chat has spoken. We will not switch to President Trump doing a live. Although, you know what though? What's interesting is that I do want to say this. So, what's happening in Venezuela does actually have an impact on the Middle East because the current Venezuelan regime is very, very closely tied to the terrorist Islamic Republic occupying Iran. So there are like terrorist links there. I might do a video about that another day once we get more information. But keep an eye out on Venezuela because there are a lot of Islamic terrorists there as well. Okay, we will continue. But thank you for letting me know that Trump's doing a presidential address. I will watch the highlights later.
Them sitting ducks, for the Arabs.
It's not going to be World War III, guys. I don't even think it's going to be like an actual war. Like Venezuela is going to have no way to be able to counter the United States. Anyone who says like it's going to be World War III, no, it's not true.
That's also I don't know how accurate that is because you still find very martial Christians during this time. You know, like so. Okay, so Charlemagne is now the year 800. We have the rise of Charlemagne.
Wait, before we get to Charlemagne, though, so uh, the Muslim armies they don't conquer Tours and they're fought back, right? And I think all the way back to Spain.
Mhm.
You
Yep.
correct me if I get any of this history
Yeah,
wrong.
no, right.
So what galvanizes them, the Europeans, to fight back, and why is it that they don't go past into, at that point, presumably it's called Al Andalus, right? So
Yeah, that's what the Arabs call it. Yeah. Yeah.
what would the Europeans have called that region?
To them, it was I mean, it's known sometimes as Iberia, but it's the Spains because it was various Spanish kingdoms before it became one. Hispania, that was,
Okay.
I think, its Latin term.
So there was at least by the time they got to Tours, which is a long way into,
Yeah.
far into Europe,
Mhm.
there was a sort of galvanizing of Christians,
Yeah,
Christian armies,
right.
and there was a military response.
Right. So in Spain, you had the Visigoths, okay, and El Andalus is actually because the Arabs, they somehow confused the Visigoths with the Vandals. El Andalus, Vandals. Okay, so that's, I think, the origin of the etymology of that.
Ah, okay.
Why they call it that, yeah, because the Vandals were in North Africa also a little before that time, and they conflate them all together, Vandals, Visigoth. They fought back, the Visigoths, and they lost. I mean, they were, and again, these are very sketchy sources. We just have one or two chronicles that are vague, but we know they fought back and there were major battles, but they lost and they got Islamized. And but then a very small, a very small group of Christians, according to both Muslim, and it's a very interesting story. Led by a man named Peleo or Pelagius, and he was the one who is supposedly initiated the Reconquista. So they fled into the rocky, barren regions of the northwestern quadrant of the Spanish peninsula, and they lived in caves, just a small group of Christians. Okay, and the rest of the Christians became dhimmis, or subjects of the Islamic State, paying tribute and being essentially second-class citizens. And but from that small hole in the northwest quadrant is where the Reconquista begins, and it comes down slowly southwards.
So that's almost immediately after.
Yeah.
Okay.
According to the yeah.
And then you've got sort of 800 years of battles between them
until 1492, basically, and still Muslims are there even after 1492. But so basically, from 711, we're talking like over 700 years, almost 8. And it's to me, Spain is a microcosm of the sort of Christian Muslim wars, because it's all just concentrated in one little nation. And all the things that we know that we can talk about these conflicts manifest themselves in stark display in Spain. Okay, because you have the Christians versus the Muslims. The Muslims are in the south, the Christians are in the north. They're in constant warfare.
So they're not actually living amongst each other. They push to different regions.
Well, so the Free Christians of the north, that were a small group, they started pushing south, and they were independent, and they were the enemies of the Muslims. A lot of Christians during the conquest did live in the south with the Muslims as second-class dhimmis, subjects, okay? And every time, it was, as usual, when the Muslims and the Christians were fighting, the Muslims of the south versus the Free Christians of the north, the Muslims would take it out on their own Christians as a sort of collective punishment, and
right.
Yeah, that comes out a lot. So, and while we're at it, because someone's going to say, well, what about the great Andalusia? And this is where, this is where Jews and Christians and Muslims prospered and they loved each other. This is one of the themes that is, or apologias that often comes out. And all I have to say to that, well, the easy answer, anyone who really wants to delve into this question, they should read the professor. He's a friend of mine, Dario Fernandez Morera. He wrote a book called The Andalusian Myth, a whole book, okay, just tearing into this idea. But just to give you one example, at the height of this golden age, you have what's called the martyrs of Cordoba, which is something like 50, 60 Christians who get boiled, skinned alive, impaled, beheaded, because they blasphemed against Muhammad. Okay. So this is like, they find.
And let's not forget that even today, people who blaspheme against Muhammad are murdered, impaled, beheaded, whatever, by the same radicals. So the behavior and the violence that you're seeing today is not a bug, it's a feature of jihad, which started 1400 years ago and it's just basically continued.
Finally, they found what they want to claim is this great time of tolerance and beauty, and Yeah, but they're acting like ISIS on steroids. Okay, but
Mm.
we don't talk about that. So my point is just to show you that even when they try to find something, if you really look into it, no, it's the same as usual. What they're really boasting about is it was so wealthy. So Andalusia was wealthy, and people
To the person in the chat who's saying that the Sunni version is peaceful, but the Shia version is not. Listen, I'm not going to get into like your weird, like, arguments that you have with one another where you're like, oh, this group is real Islam, this group is not real Islam. That's between you guys to sort out. But all I want to say is that ISIS is the peaceful Sunni version of Islam, and it was ISIS terrorists who basically did the Yazidi genocide. So, I mean, potato, potato, right? Potato, potato. It's all the same book.
will talk about, oh, look at the backwards Europes. They were, whatever, poor, and look at this grand civilization, Andalusia. What they don't tell you is most of that wealth was because the Muslims were plundering it from the Europeans, including selling them on the slave market and plundering them essentially. And that's usually, that has always traditionally been Islam's capital, other people's stuff.
Were they converting Europeans to Islam?
Yeah. So when they conquered Spain, for example, I'm sure a lot of native Spaniards, Christians converted.
Okay. And was it, did they bring sort of civilization with them from
Well, so
Africa,
that's the question.
was it a sort of military nation of a kind of a band of
warrior aristocracy?
Warriors, warrior aristocracy. Yeah.
That's definitely how it was originally, initially. And so when you look, sometimes they'll tell you, well, yeah, but the Islamic world was so advanced when Europe was in the Dark Ages. Okay, so what they don't tell you is, one, this is still an early time, so that a lot of the people who were inventing things or doing something important, Averroes, the philosopher, or whatever, a lot of these guys were either Christians or Jews, or even more often they had recently converted. So this important person or whatever just became a Muslim recently, or he was the son of a man who converted. So a lot of times, whatever credit is being allotted to Islam was really by Jews and Christians of the old civilizations doing what they've always been doing. Okay.
Interesting. So in this version, like, so this was the older one, right? Because in his new one, in his new interview, um, he did say that the vast majority of people who were doing all of the inventions and findings were Persian and they were Zoroastrian. However, this is an older interview back from May, and he says Christian and Jewish, but he like provides no mention of Persians. So this is interesting. Let's see if he's going to correct himself here or not, because again, this is an older one. In the newer interview, he does say the proper history, but this is weird.
But sort of Islam gets the credit. But where Islam really takes over, and then it really spreads and everyone becomes Muslim, you see the opposite. Okay. In Spain, to go back to that, it was the Muslims were obligated, especially when the Christians of the north were still weak, to wage 2 jihads every year, and it was always devastating. And they came back with the heads of, they would decapitate, make
they
pyramids.
Were obligated to wage.
Were obligated
by who?
By Islamic law. The Caliph said twice a year. And there are Islamic teachings in the Sharia of you have to launch raids on the infidel. You can't live in peace with them as long as you can. Obviously, if you're weak, you shouldn't. So, and very graphic, to the point that until now, there are portions of Spain, especially the middle zone, where the frontier, that are completely destroyed, and they still can't bring it back to life. It's just a complete war zone from all that. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's anyway. It's good we can kind of stop right here real quick, because now we're getting to near the Crusade time, and we haven't even gotten there. But just think it for a while, like all this is what happened before the First Crusade, right?
Yeah.
And when we talk about the First Crusade, you're going to find out the problem is people present it in a vacuum. They don't tell you what I just told you. And all of a sudden, it's just these crazy Catholics decided to go and go abuse the poor. A guy like John Esposito, I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a professor from Georgetown, where I went. And there's a quote, which I quote so often that I think I've memorized it from him. And he says, 5 centuries of peaceful coexistence elapsed between Muslims and Christians until an imperial papal power play led to a series of so-called holy wars which have left an enduring legacy of mistrust and resentment amongst Muslims. In other words, before the First Crusade, which was called in 1095, I haven't even gotten there. I've basically stopped around 800, right?
Yeah.
Before that, he's saying Muslims and Christians lived in perfect peace and harmony. Even though I just got done telling you that Muslims conquered 3/4 of the Islamic world, of the Christian world through sheer violence and bloodshed. Okay. And that's what and the thing is, it's not just him. This is the official line amongst historians and academics. And I mentioned him because he was especially back in the day when I was going there, every military analysts and politicians would consult him about questions about Islam. And it's the same thing with people like Karen Armstrong. She's a best-selling author about religions. You read what she says. Again, she'll start off with the Crusades and just how evil it was, and act like everything before it was nothing but Muslims being good to Christians. Okay, so these are what we would call, omission,
Lies
crimes
by
of
omission.
omission. Yeah.
Right. But at that point, though, do we need to go back to Charlemagne to tie the bow on Charlemagne?
No, not really. I mean, he's great for his own thing, Charles the Great. I'll give you one quick anecdote again because it shows you the games they play. So it's known that he and Harun al-Rashid, the Caliph, the Abbasid Caliph, had good relations. Okay. And people use this often as, see.
And where was that Caliph based?
Baghdad.
Okay.
The Abbasid Caliphate. And we're talking now, the year 800 or a little after. And people will always show you, it's, Islam and Christians got along. You got two emperors, or a caliph and an emperor, and they were friends, et cetera, et cetera. And they gave gifts to each other. But when you dig in and you read the chronicles, and I quoted, I'm pretty sure in Sword and Scimitar, I discuss the chronicler of Charlemagne. He makes it perfectly clear that the reason Charlemagne was being nice and reaching out to Harun al-Rashid was almost like he was bribing him to be good to the Christians under his authority in Egypt, in Iraq, in the Islamic world, because there were so many Christians. So he says that, the chronicler, he says the reason he sought out friendships was so he can make the plight of Christians living in those regions less, and he can help them. Okay, so you see how, again, that is omitted, but we're told about, look, they got along, because Muslims and Christians always get along. So that's I can leave it at that with Charlemagne.
So then let's go to the Crusades.
Yeah,
this is quite a whistle-blow tour. So it's 1095.
So 1095, but we have to start a little earlier to give context. So, everything I discussed was during the rise of the Arab Empire, and it went through iterations. You had the Umayyads, and then you had the Abbasids, which I just mentioned. And then sometime after that, the Abbasids start importing Turkic slaves and Islamizing them. Slave soldiers, okay, like the Janissaries and the Mamluks. And long story short, before long, the Turks become very Muslim, and they become Sunni Muslims, which is important because we're going to talk a little bit about Shias. And eventually they take over, and they still keep the caliphate, the Abbasid, but he's more of a puppet figure, and the real power is the Seljuk Sultan. All right. Now, during this time, especially from like 1050 to 1090, okay, right before the First Crusade, these Seljuks are running amok. Okay, so the persecution and the destruction of Christians that I'd mentioned earlier under the Arabs, times 10. I mean, now it's horrific. Okay, they start in Armenia, Greater Armenia, which is, what we would say Eastern Anatolia. And according to the records, I'm thinking of Matthew of Edessa, who was a contemporary. They were just killing tens of thousands of Christians, Armenians, Greeks, okay, and burning every church in Ani, which was the capital at the time of Armenia. It was known as the city of 1,001 churches. They ritually burned down every church, destroyed every crucifix. I tell you that to also underscore, because a lot of people will tell you, okay, the Turks, people were warring, it's different tribes, and they try to, minimize the religious element. So that's why I'm telling you that in their own sources, it's very clear that they did what ISIS would do. They symbolically were trying to denigrate Christianity. They would destroy churches. They would take the greatest cross of the greatest church and send it as a war trophy to Baghdad, to the Caliph. Okay, so my point is, it wasn't just warfare. It had that jihadist ideological component. Okay, which again, historians like to just ignore as some sort of, whatever, but it's in the sources. And they were also in the Holy Land. You had pilgrims that were always going to the Holy Land, even though it was a hard venture, and they would get persecuted even before that under the Arabs in the 7th, 8th, 9th centuries. Now the Turks really took a new level. And they would attack the pilgrims. They would extort even more money than they had to pay. There's one incident that happened in 1065, which really was a scandal. They attacked a large German pilgrimage, and they gang raped a nun, and made everyone watch it. Like really horrific stuff. They would go in churches and disembowel people and just smear the blood on the altar, again as a form of mockery. Okay, so this is this is what's building up towards the First Crusade. And then it really gets bad after the Battle of Manzikert, which is one of my main battles also in my book, Sword and
I mean, to to be perfectly honest, given the behavior that we are seeing from all of these like Islamic savages in Western countries, like they're going to Christmas markets and they're plotting terrorist attacks at Christmas markets. They're going there with their like terrorist flags and yelling globalize the intifada or whatever at Christmas markets. I don't understand how anyone can be surprised, because all you have to do is read history and you'll see that this sort of behavior is not a bug, it's a feature of this ideology, right? So it's not like what you're seeing today is new, right? This has been happening for 1400 years.
Scimitar, and the Christians again lose.
Where is that battle?
It's in Manzikert, which is actually close to Armenia in Asia Minor. The Roman emperor at the time went trying again, like Yarmouk, they went with a large army trying to stop the Seljuk Turks, and they lost. And after that, they just completely ran amok all westward, and now they're attacking all Asia Minor. Of course, I mean Turkey, what we call now it's Turkey because it got conquered during this time. And Asia Minor, by the way, so Turkey.
Wait, I have no idea why the YouTube chat people are talking about RoboCop. I missed that part about RoboCop, but I just want to say I actually really enjoyed RoboCop. Um, Although I haven't seen it in a long time, so maybe my memories of RoboCop are not because I watched it as a kid, but I always thought it was a really cool movie. So
When you hear Turkey, you think, okay, it's a Muslim nation. This was such a Christian nation that St. Paul's letters, most of them go there, Asia Minor, Turkey,
Ephesus,
yeah, a lot of them. And so now it's all conquered, and now they're right next to Constantinople, and they're on the verge of actually reaching and getting into the European mainland. And the emperor, the Roman emperor at the time, Alexis, he calls for aid from the Franks and the Europe. And he had friends there and some nobles, and they all got together. And long story short, Pope Urban II at the Council of Clermont in 1095 in November, he basically stood up and he told everything that was happening. He mentioned everything I'm telling you, all the desecrations of churches, all the rape of women, and the forced Islamization of children, and the disemboweling of Christians. Very graphic stuff. Okay, and which is in a lot of sources, so it's not one guy made it up. And that's it. And they all cried out Deus vult, which Mr. Hegseth has a tattoo of, which means God wills it, right? And that was it. They went. So if you asked earlier historians, in the 1800s, they would tell you the Crusades were motivated by love. They were actually, and a lot of it comes out in some of the sources where the Crusaders were moved by Christ's injunction to love your fellow man as much as yourself and to love God. So they were loving God because they wanted to go and liberate the Holy Sepulchre. They wanted to liberate the Holy Land, which was very important. Again, this is something modern people don't understand, but place was important. Holy sacred land was something that was, very important. So they wanted to go and liberate it from Muslim control, and they wanted to also protect fellow Christians. And now, your average person, you hear the word crusade, it's such a diabolical, evil thing, evil venture.
But that marks an interesting turning point, even from the Christian point of view, from this, let's say, turn the other cheek mentality to we're going to protect our fellow Christians by killing others.
Yeah, so the whole issue, this goes back to the concept of just war, which really one of the name that always gets thrown out there, and it's the chief articulator, they would say, and proponent is Augustine, Saint Augustine, who lived in the 4th century, okay, or was it 5th century? So he's way before all this, and to him and to almost every other doctor of the church and theologian, it was okay to fight back. And they would cite things like a Roman centurion comes to Jesus, and Jesus heals his servant, and then Jesus, you know, what does Jesus do when he does a miracle for someone? He tells him to repent, right? Change your way. He didn't tell this guy, hey, put your sword away, stop killing. I mean, this guy was a centurion. He oversaw the bloodshed, a lot of bloodshed. Jesus didn't say anything to him. Okay, so also John the Baptist, when people came to him and a bunch of soldiers came to him and saying, what must we do? He didn't tell them leave the army. He said, don't be content with your pay. Okay, so a lot of these were understood by early church theologians as justifying just war theory. As long as the war is not about, conquests and enforcing whatever my will on you. If I'm defending my land, that was 100% Christian. Okay, and so, and this is why. Okay, so if you don't understand everything I've been saying, if you didn't hear this, then how is crusades just war? Because what you see is a bunch of Europeans going to Muslim territory. What's just in that? But if you know the truth, which is, well, that was Christian territory, and they were killing Christians still and destroying Christian lands and holy sacred places, then it did become part of the just war theory. You see what I'm saying?
But it's 300 years since that it had been Muslim.
Yeah. But I mean, to their thinking,
to their point of view,
and it was still full of Christians, and I mean, I don't think they went by statutes of limitations, right? They didn't think that way. So,
right. Okay.
So in their mind, they still rationalized it, but specifically it was because they were killing Christians and attacking Christians' places. Okay, so that was it. And even if it wasn't Christian beforehand, I think they would have just war theory would cover the logic. Why are you killing innocent Christians?
So this is the first of several crusades.
Yeah.
Can you take me? I actually am not too good on crusade history. Can you take me through them?
Sure. So the first crusade is the most successful one. It's arguably the only successful one because they got what they want. They went through, and the sufferings they went through are amazing, but they liberated various Christian regions and cities, Antioch, Edessa, and most importantly, Jerusalem, because that's what they really wanted. The Holy Sepulchres, or the Church of the Resurrection, was this massive complex that was built atop what is believed to have been Jesus's burial. Not just his burial; it was actually a humongous structure built during Constantine's time in the 300s. So in this church, you actually had where Jesus was betrayed, the Garden of Gethsemane, and then you also had where he was crucified, and you had where he was buried. Okay, and it was and resurrected. And a quick anecdote, which I almost forgot, but is pivotal to what we're talking about. In the year 1009, okay, so we got to go back in time a little bit. And just, again, what I'm going to tell you is going to, again, underscore just how Christian that region was and underscore the sorts of persecution that went. But there was a Fatimid caliph in Egypt, and the Fatimids were Shia, okay, and his name is Hakim Ba'amr Allah. And this guy, okay, they call him the Mad Caliph because they want to pretend that what he did, what I'm going to tell you, was the product of a maniac, right? Yeah, and there's no rationale. Under him, he had 30,000 churches in Egypt and in greater Syria destroyed. Okay, so first of all, 30,000, that's a humongous number of churches in an area that I thought was Muslim. Okay, and the source for this, which a lot of Western people try to ignore, is an Arabic Muslim source, Al-Makrizi. All right. And he says 30,000, and people say, no, that's a mistake. You put one too many zeros. He meant 300, and historians will write, 300 churches, but he wrote 30,000, including the Holy Sepulchre, the one that I'm discussing. He had it destroyed and pulverized, and then it was later rebuilt, a smaller version. But the one that I was telling you about by Constantine, he had it razed to the ground, this most important place for Christianity.
As far as my geography of Jerusalem goes, that must have been huge, because where I know the rock where the crucifix was, the distance to that where it is believed the tomb was.
You're talking about the rock with the round stone. That there's two places that people believe where Christ was buried. The one you're talking about, I think, is the later one. Mostly Protestants actually accept. Catholics and Orthodox believe it was somewhere which was actually closer.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. The Crusades, the first one is the most successful,
right?
And then, how did the first Crusades end?
Yeah, let me just finish the Fatimid thing, because this is very important, because it ties up to what we're talking about. So 30,000 churches destroyed, and again, I want to remind you, you have these people who are telling us 5 centuries of peaceful coexistence were between Muslims.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always happy to do crossovers and work together on that, and support one another. um so I hate to admit this because I feel terrible, but I've actually received a lot of requests from different people across various YouTube channels who are like reaching out to me on various social media platforms, um who want me to go on their podcasts and speak. um it's just been very difficult for me to keep track of all of it because right now I'm really working on sort of building my channel, and I'm also working on my website to kind of like have a website. So I don't really have like official contact info right now. um, but like I'm hoping that I will have like my website with like my official contact info up and running within like the next week or so. And then that way, at least when people reach out to me, um they'll know how to get a hold of me, because right now people are like trying to DM me, or whatever, and I get like so many DMs on Instagram and TikTok and X that I can't keep track. But I definitely do want to do collabs with a lot of people. There's a lot of people who are interested. Definitely on my radar for sure, 100%. But thank you so much for the suggestion, and thank you for the support. I think you just became a channel member during this live stream, so I really appreciate that. Appreciate the super comment. I actually am. I just opened a Rumble account. Just like a few days ago. So I am actually streaming this on Rumble right now. Um, but I think I only have like 4 followers on Rumble. Let me see. Yeah, I only have 4 followers on Rumble. And even though I am live streaming this on Rumble as well, I literally have like 0 people watching this. So, but I'm a little bit late to the Rumble game, and I haven't even uploaded all of my videos. So I have to go back to like I basically just need some time where I just go to Rumble, and all the videos that I've already uploaded to YouTube, I need to like re-upload to Rumble, and I really need to work on building it up. But yeah, no, thank you for the suggestion. I would definitely be interested um in doing collabs with other people. I just need a little bit of time to kind of like get everything set up and organized, and so that there's also a way for people to get a hold of me where I actually get all the emails and all the contact requests. But no, thank you for that. Thank you for the support and for the suggestion.
And Christians. What I just told you is 1009. This is the time frame they're talking about. 30,000 churches were completely destroyed. Okay, and these people are writing books and saying everything was fine until the First Crusade. You see how they present things in a vacuum?
Yeah.
They don't want you to. They want you to think that the Christians were the aggressors. They had no reason to do what they did. Okay. All right. So then, okay, the Crusades, you have various, what gives rise to them is essentially then the Muslims start winning back and conquering. So around 1144, you have the Second Crusade because some Muslim sultan destroys Edessa on Christmas Day, which was a Christian principality. And it was full of Armenians and Greeks. And again, to give you an idea in the sources, when the Franks and the Crusaders came and liberated these regions, which had a lot of indigenous Christians, Armenians and Greeks and Syriacs.
What's my Rumble channel name? I think it's you know what? I don't even know if I have a channel. I think it's just like my Rumble account. Um I mean, let me see here. Like I'm telling you, like I'm still trying to figure out Rumble. So yeah, it's just Gigamari. It's just Gigamari here. Like I can show you. Um I guess I should. Is that how Rumble works? Like, do I have to make a channel on top of like my account? I don't know. Um Here, I'll show you what it looks like. So this is my Rumble account, guys. I have 4 followers on Rumble. So to whoever my 4 Rumble followers are, you guys are the OG. Thank you for that. And as you can see, I am technically, like, not technically, I am live streaming this on Rumble right now. And I have one viewer. So, to the one viewer who is watching me on Rumble, thank you. And you're not alone, because there's literally like 2,000 other viewers who are also watching this live stream, but they're on X and YouTube. So, I'm sorry that Rumble is a little lonely right now. I promise that I will work on um I'll work on building my Rumble channel. I promise. I promise. But whoever that one MVP is on Rumble, like, you are the real. I have no idea who it is. I can't see. I just see that it's like one viewer here. So yeah, but to the person on Rumble, you are the real MVP, and I do appreciate you for sure. So all right.
The sources talk about how they threw themselves and kissed their hands and feet. Now, why would they do that? I thought they lived in harmony with their Muslim overlords.
Mm.
Why would they want these strange men from Europe? Because they were all Christians, okay, and they were being persecuted. So in 1144, the Edessa is completely ransacked and destroyed, and just again, like, very sadistic stuff is happening to the women and children, and it gave rise to a new crusade. Okay, and that one was abysmal failure. They got nothing. They just died. Everyone who came, it was under King Louis and Conrad, I believe, the German emperor, completely destroyed. And then, things kind of status quo, and you still have Jerusalem, and you still have Antioch and other places. And then you get the rise of Saladin, okay? And he's very, as we all know, very popular. And he actually conquers Jerusalem. All right, he had a major battle, the Battle of Hattin, the two horns, which is, again, in my book, Sword and Scimitar, has a whole chapter. In 1187, he wins, and he beats a massive Crusader army of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. And after that, they all fall like dominoes. He conquers Jerusalem. He conquers a lot of Christian territories, and there's only a few left. And that's what calls the Third Crusade. King Richard is, of course, the one who spearheaded it, but also King Philip as well from France, and Barbarossa, the German emperor, who unfortunately brought the biggest army, but then died on his way. He fell in a river. He was very old, but and Richard is very impressive. I have a whole chapter dedicated to him and the Third Crusade and Defenders of the West, because he's when you read about this guy in the actual sources, it's amazing. Apparently, he was a giant. Okay, something like 6'6", or because
Oh, really?
yeah, and at that time, and the sources just describe him always leading his men, being in the center of the charge, the first one in, decapitating, slaughtering everyone. And the Muslims themselves, actually, in their sources, talk about him like that. So he was quite the formidable character. Very interesting. Anyway, the Third Crusade was kind of not a total victory, but not a total loss. Like, him and Saladin made a treaty, so Christians can go back to Jerusalem, but it was still under Islamic control, and whatever.
Mhm.
And then you have the Fourth Crusade, which is basically, which people loved to point fingers at, because it's where the Crusaders go and sack Constantinople, right? Christians attacking Christians. And that has its own story and different versions of why that happened. But before we get into that, I'm just remembering, again, very important point about Saladin before we leave Saladin. Now, this guy, you've heard how magnanimous Saladin was, right? And because I follow this and I read a lot of books, okay, about this, he's always held up as this great, magnanimous and very tolerant, sultan. Until today, people say Christians can learn from him and his magnanimity, etc., etc. And he's, to me, and I made a video about him, he's the epitome of fake history. Because why do people say that? So, okay, if you look into the sources, especially here's what they'll tell you. When Saladin conquered Jerusalem, which he did in 1187, he allowed the Christians to leave peacefully, and he was very magnanimous. And they always contrast it with the First Crusade in 1099, when the Christians conquered Jerusalem. Apparently, there was a bloodbath. Okay, they killed everyone in sight. Okay, so they use this. Now, what they don't tell you, okay, is, one, according to the Muslim sources, he was like a fanatic jihadist who did nothing but persecute anyone who went against Islamic law. In Egypt, he had the Christians, the Copts, persecuted. He had their churches tarred. For what did they do, right? They're not crusaders. And then he had, after the Battle of Hattin, the Knights of the Temple and the Hospital, he gave them a choice: to convert to Islam or be beheaded. they all said no, and you had something like 300 of them decapitated. In fact, going back to how ISIS, likes to live off history, when you see ISIS, the Islamic State, and those videos they made of Coptic Christians or whoever, and they have them in the orange jumpsuit and they push them over and carve their heads off, that is directly lifted from what Saladin had done to these Christians at the Battle of Han. Exactly. That's how it's described. And they're emulating it. Okay. And also he did all sorts of other nasty stuff. His dying wish was to not just get rid of the Crusaders in the Holy Land, but to invade Europe until no one lived who didn't believe in Allah. I mean, this doesn't sound like a magnanimous, tolerant guy to me. You know what I mean? Okay. And then in even what he did in Jerusalem, this supposedly magnanimous gesture, no bloodbath. If you look at the sources, what really happened is they told him he was besieging, and he said, "Okay." They tried to surrender, and he said, "No, I'm going to kill every last one of you." But then they said, "Okay, we're going to destroy Al-Aqsa Mosque," because they had possession of. We're going to destroy all the holy sites of Islam, and we're going to kill all our hostages. So he finally agreed to let them go if they can pay a ransom. Okay. And the ones who couldn't, which was something like 8,000 or 16,000, I have the number written down, and mostly women and children because they were poor, were consigned to slavery. Okay. So it's like, but he's being used today as this paragon of virtue and magnanimity. Okay. And people believe that. And where does it come from? It actually comes from Sir Walter Scott's novels. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. He created this chivalrous kind of Saladin, and all of a sudden that's what people believe as if it's real history. Okay. So anyway, I just wanted to emphasize that because, Saladin is a very popular figure when we talk about the Crusades, and so much of what is said about him is just, overdone just so they can put up a Muslim on a pedestal and try to shame Christians with. But when you look at the reality, it's just not there.
And where did the Jews fit in all of this? Were they? I understood that many of them were killed.
Yeah. So the Jews, even before, I mean, and here's again one of those things where people try to demonize the Crusades because they attacked and killed Jews, and they did. But the Jews were being attacked and killed by Christians even before that. But what happened is, a lot of it was mostly the peasant crusaders, not the actual knights and the formal armies. But a lot of them would go and they'd get riled up and say, "Why are we traveling all this distance during their long trek to kill infidels who hate Jesus when we have them right here, the Jews who killed him?" And they would rile themselves up and they'd go attack and kill them.
And there were some terrible pogroms, weren't there?
Yeah. But, it's also important to know that the church and the leaders were against it. And
against the pogroms.
Yeah. And they would issue edicts saying you have to leave the Jews alone, and they would come in their defense. So it was almost like what always happens. You have the rabble, but the actual church policy was not to persecute them. And the Crusader policy was not to persecute them or do any of that. But of course, you're going to have the bad apples who act on whatever impulse they want to just plunder them on whatever pretext.
So at this point, though, we still have the Muslims in Spain.
Right.
The Crusades have the rest of Europe then is Christian.
Right.
And
Wait, someone just said sound. Are we having sound issues? No, you retracted? Amir, did you accidentally push the mute button? Is that what happened? All right, okay. I don't think we're having sound issues. Okay. All right.
the area that is now Israel, Lebanon, that's kind of going back and forth. No, that's under Muslim
the
control.
Holy Land. Yeah, at this point now it's under Muslim control. So the Crusaders finally get expelled in 1292. Okay, that's the end of it.
Okay.
After the fall of Acre, however you want to pronounce it, that was the final stronghold.
I think the mods were just testing me to see if I'm paying attention to the live stream chat or not. So there you go. I'm paying attention. I might not be looking, but I'm paying attention. I'm telling you, I'm like a master when it comes to multitasking. So yeah.
After Saladin, and then the Mamluks came and they started conquering more, and then by 1292 there you have no more Crusader presence in the Holy Land.
Okay. So we'll come back to what happens next because there's some important events. Particularly, there's 2 sieges on Vienna by the Ottomans, and I'm keen to ask you about Constantinople.
So to the person that said I'm a Jewish Zionist, I am a Zionist, but I'm not actually Jewish. I'm Iranian. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's meant to be an insult, because that's not an insult to me whatsoever. I love Jews. I've been to Israel Beautiful country, beautiful culture, beautiful tradition, beautiful religion. I love like Jewish food. Guys, I get invited to so many Shabbat dinners, and I love Shabbat dinners because it's like the best food, the best wine, the best conversations. So I'm not Jewish, but I guess you could say like I'm Jewish. You know what I mean? Jewish. Because the Jewish community has just welcomed me so much. So yeah, like there you go. I mean, I don't understand why people come in this channel and then they call me like a Zionist as if like that's an insult. 100% I'm a Zionist. I do believe in the right of uh, the Jewish people to have self determination. You know, I believe that Israel belongs to the Jewish people. Palestine is literally fake. I don't even think like Gaza, like I don't believe in the two-state solution. I think the two-state solution already happened when you had Jordan that was created, and then Israel was carved out, right? So the two-state solution is Jordan and Israel. And then for some reason, the jihadis aren't happy. They just want to eradicate all of Israel. So they're going after the rest of Israel. But I think Judea and Samaria belongs to Israel. And I think, Gaza should go back to Israel as well, right? And then if the jihadis don't like it, they can go back to Egypt or they can go to Jordan, where they belong. So there you go. That's my thoughts on it.
As well, or as we know it now, Istanbul. But you've mentioned a few times as you're discussing this that historians like to ignore this. Historians like to ignore that, or they paint this one-sided picture. And the way you actually describe it is that the one-sided picture they paint is the opposite of what is true. I'm curious about what you think the motivation is by those historians.
I think there's several. I think today it's just it's kind of it's snowballed, and it's just that's the narrative. So if you're just a moderately if you go to college today and you're a history major and you're studying this field, you're not going to read primary sources, which you should. That used to be the original thing. You're supposed to, but you go read this, 3-4 books by the secondary source would be, like me, okay, a modern person who supposedly consults the primary sources and then, puts it into a book form and you read it. So most people will read that. And those books now, they've been going, and the question is why, but have painted a completely different picture. A guy like Sir Stephen Runciman, for example, he wrote like 4 or 5 volumes of the Crusades, and it was considered, the bestseller, et cetera, et cetera. I think came out maybe in the 50s or 60s. And now historians will tell you, yeah, this guy really had an axe to grind, and he was just dedicated to making the Christians look bad and making the Muslims look good. All right. And how do we know this? Because the ones who have taken the time to consult the primary sources are realizing what he's saying is not there. And oftentimes the opposite is there. So why? Okay. The reason why I would argue today, it's because of what we.
So wait, I see this comment here. So Baptirian presbytist. Thank you for the kind words. I would not make a very good politician in Iran only because my Farsi is not that great. Like I can speak Farsi, like I can speak Persian. I can read, write, understand. My conversational Persian is fantastic. No issues there. But when it comes to like, professional Persian, I wouldn't be able to. I wouldn't be able to do it. I would like, half my speeches would be in English. So no, I can't see myself being a politician in a free Iran. But yeah. But thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that.
Would call.
So the person who asked if I am Mossad, 100% I am Mossad. I'm actually a Mossad agent. I'm here to distract all of you guys. So yeah, definitely 100% Mossad.
Political correctness. It's this desire, honestly, okay, really to bring it down where, the narrative has to always be this. Christians, whites are bad. Non-Christians, brown people are good. Okay, this is it. That's the mantra, and everything has to conform to this. Why? Okay, we can get into that, but that has been the case for, I would say, a long time, since the 60s, okay? And this sort of self-hatred thing has arose. But, there's also other reasons, academic reasons. For example, You want to be a historian, okay? The thing that would make you popular is you come up with a new interpretation. So for the longest time, the interpretation was what I'm telling you. But if I can come up with something clever, like, oh, wait, actually, Andalusia was a great beacon of light and learning. Okay, wow, then I've made a new contribution, especially if it's what people want to hear. People want to hear that narrative for the reasons I just explained. They don't want to hear about, okay, Christians and Muslims fighting.
Someone said we're all Mossad. 100%. Literally every single one of us is a Mossad agent, guy. Everyone in the chat is Mossad. Mossad is watching. This entire channel is funded by Mossad. Yeah, so we're all Mossad here. Every single person is Mossad. Like, this is basically an episode of Tehran.
Because Muslims are aggressors, etc.
Mm.
So all of these, but again, today in the current climate, it's just what I'm saying right now. I don't care how my books, Sword and Scimitar, has like over 1,000 citations, endnotes, to show you where I got my stuff because I already knew I'm going to be attacked. Where'd you get that? Where'd you get that? So the facts are there, but people they still till this very day want to believe that narrative, okay? And you see it everywhere, manifestations of what I just said, this narrative, even if you're watching the news.
Oh, wait, what? Wait. What is this? Okay, sorry. I saw a comment here. Wait, where'd it go? So crazy old biker says a Rumble search for you results in dozens of different accounts that feature me. These people are all making money off of my videos on Rumble, and I only have 5 followers on Rumble. Oh my god. Okay, I really need to go and build my Rumble channel here cuz yeah. Um Okay, so someone said, "Oh, Jewish Samantha, does that mean I get 7K for being in the live chat?" Yeah, so everyone here, because you're all Mossad agents, you all get like 7K. So just wait for that. Your check is coming in the mail from Mossad. So there you go. There you go. Because I'm the main Mossad agent, I actually get $7,000 per minute. So $7,000 per minute for me, but you guys get 7,000 for appearing. Yes, the 7,000 was promised to us 3,000 years ago, according to the jihadis. So there you go. Yeah, thank you, Mossad.
And there's some kind of incident or criminal activity in between a black man and a white man or something, it has to be spun a certain way. So of course it's been going on with history because history, people talk about fake news and it's very important, obviously, but to me fake history is more important because fake news is ephemeral and it creates its mischief, but then it vanishes and we move on to something else. Fake history, you create overarching narratives and basically paradigms where you sift reality through. So if I've created a fake history where, Muslim Christian relations are such that Christians were the evil aggressors and Muslims were the poor guys, well, of course, now when you talk about anything in the modern era and you see it through that lens, it all makes perfect sense and gives you more reason to despise the Christians and the Westerners, etc. And that's what's been going on for a long time, which is why I think when I discuss these things,
guys, your comments, you're making me laugh. Like, this is a very serious topic. The guy's talking about how Muslims were persecuting people, and then I see your comments and I laugh. Oh my gosh. Okay. That's what I get. That's what I get. My fault. It's my fault.
the number one response I get from people is like, I'm embarrassed. I didn't know this. Why didn't I learn this in school? Well, this is why you didn't, because there's a narrative.
Fake news has a political agenda.
Right.
Then fake history, it's the agenda.
More profound.
It's more profound.
Yeah.
But it's still somewhat political, right?
Yeah, of course, it is political, and it manifests itself ultimately in a political way. But it's very subtle, and it's harder to prove. And so fake news, we can argue, oh, here's evidence that this guy didn't say whatever. But fake history, who's going to take the time to delve into the primary sources? Like, let's say I did. And I did it because I love it, and I was at the Library of Congress, and I had access to all those books, and I know a couple of languages. So it's not that easy to do that, and you're just going to go by. If I go to the bookstores, Barnes and Nobles, for example, and I go to the Middle East or a history section, all the books, and I'm familiar with them, they're all the politically correct.
Sorry, someone asked me how my hair is so fluffy. The answer is Mossad. My hair is fluffy because of Mossad.
Correct books that say the exact opposite of what I'm telling you.
Yeah.
So if you mean well and you want to read a book and you educate yourself and you go to Barnes and Nobles, you're just gonna you're gonna learn the exact opposite. And that's why I always find it funny that you're better off being ignorant, because if you're ignorant, if you're an learned person, maybe just dropped high school and you didn't go to college, you're probably gonna have a better understanding of what we're talking about from an instinctual level, at least.
Yeah.
But if you go, the further you go into higher education and formally study these things, what happens is you learn the exact opposite, but then you're proud of it and you're so zealous about what you know, because I got a degree. I know this. You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But what happened is you've been indoctrinated in lies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So look, you've mentioned a couple of books that have changed the popular understanding of, let's say, the Crusades and these various other moments. But could you pinpoint to a specific moment in time when the narrative changed from, as you described earlier, there was a common understanding in Europe about Islam aggression in Europe, to now where most people have no idea? Is there a moment in time where that
the transitional phase? Yeah, which is a good question. So, okay, honestly, it all really starts with, and a lot of people don't like to hear this, but with the Protestant Reformation, okay? Because with the break with the Catholic Church was a need to, I don't want to use the word demonize, but whatever, justify the break. And so anything the Catholic Church did became jaundiced and kind of bad, including the Crusades. And, the Protestants made good points, indulgences, et cetera, et cetera. I get that. That makes sense. But you got this move now where, like, whatever we can, however we can make Catholics look bad, we should. And that was...
You're making me laugh, and then people who aren't like looking at the chat and the replay, they're gonna think that I'm laughing at what Raymond is saying. Oh my gosh. Okay, so Mossad is gonna make Goldie like one of those rich Persians. Sure. Yeah. Guys, what have we started here? We've started like, oh my gosh. People are going to take us seriously. Like, I guarantee you, some people are going to like take clips of what I'm saying now, and they're going to be like, see, she's Mossad. She's Mossad. So there you go.
The beginning. So Martin Luther, he condemned the Crusades, and then he condemned when the Turks were actually invading Vienna or coming towards Austria. He actually said, don't fight back. And he said, this is God's way of punishing the Catholics and church, until they got close to where he was. And he actually changed his tune, literally, and wrote a new saying, no, you can't fight back. It is just war. I'm not lying to you. This is true. I can give you the evidence.
How's that for motivated reasoning?
Yeah. So it really starts with a product. And look, I don't want to get into I'm not a theologian. I'm not arguing who's right theologically. I'm just saying, as a historical development, the rift in Christendom between Protestants and Catholics created a sort of hatred towards the Crusades, okay? Because it was another thing to point at and say, oh, look. And they also, this was also the beginning of the rehabilitation of Muslims in the eyes of Europeans, because if Muslims are the enemies of the bad guys, the Catholics, they must be good, okay? And this is why till today, it's actually Protestant nations that are suffering from Islam, because they're the ones who have completely opened their doors and who follow this logic, which is Muslims are great. It's the Catholics you got to worry about. Okay, or at least elements of it still subconsciously maybe exist. And that's why you have Muslims running amok in Scandinavia and Sweden and in the UK and in Germany. But then you look at countries like Hungary and Poland, which is Hungary, I know, is Catholic, and so is Poland, and you don't see that sort of thing as much, of course. And I think that's so anyway, that's the beginning of it. I would say the Protestant Reformation. And again, this isn't me. I'm not talking about theology. I'm talking about historical development, which is normal, of course. And then you get the Enlightenment, right? And with the Enlightenment, all of a sudden now there's a kind of, it's not that the Muslims are good, but yeah, these Christians are fanatics. This is now Edward Gibbon, for example, and Voltaire and these guys. So now, once again, the Crusaders and their cause looks ridiculous, and they're stupid, and what are they fighting over? This is dumb, etc. Okay, and then you move on until you come to sort of the modern, 19th century, 1800s. Now you have serious scholars, Orientalists, and they just approach it in a very cold fashion. I actually like their writings; they're objective, okay, and they're looking at the sources. and they're actually better than the other guys, but you still have the influence of the sort of, the Protestant disdain for crusades, and you have the Enlightenment disdain as well. And then you come into the modern era where, again, I think it's this need, where it comes from. I think sometime in the 60s, you get this move, this very anti Christian thing where, Christians and Europeans and Westerners are the root of all problems. Okay. And of course, this is how the Crusades fit. So now it's being taught that way. And, we're gravitating back. So now it's worse than ever, because what they're doing is they're literally playing with history. I already gave you an example of all the horrors that happened before the First Crusade. In 1 year, 30,000 churches were destroyed. This is to say nothing of the killings of Christians under Hakim Amrullah, the Fatimid Caliph, or all the other ones. And they ignore all that intentionally and just tell you, oh, Crusades just happened out of the blue, 5 centuries of peace, down the toilet. And now Muslims, can you imagine that when 9/11 and all that happened, and until now, when there's an Islamic terror attack in Europe, they try to actually associate it to the Crusades and say, well, Muslims are still upset about that. They have grievances. Okay. And they don't. I mean, because Muslims are not idiots. They actually respect the Crusades in the sense that, oh, okay, there was a time when Christians fought back. Oh, okay, good for them. But I mean, everything is being done, to just rewire everything so it fits that narrative.
Yeah. So let's.
No, it's not. It's not noodles, guys. It's a poke bowl. So it's salmon with some brown rice and mixed veggies. So there you go. And yeah, I needed a refill on my bubbly. So now I have mango flavor. So, but I was listening because I have my Bluetooth headphones in here. So there we go.
Let's go back to the history of it. Both sides of Europe, at the sort of mid-second millennia, we have the Inquisition happening in Spain, and we have the Ottomans charging, well, not only Constantinople, but right up as far as Vienna. Maybe we start with the Inquisition.
Sure. So, and here I'm going to talk about the Inquisition, but you're going to start finding something interesting here. Is like all these major historical epics and developments that we talk about, you're going to find Islam snuck in somehow, including in the Inquisition. Okay. So the Inquisition to us is, just crazy fanatical Christians torturing everyone to get the facts, etc. And then there's elements of that as well. Okay. But it really started. Why did it start in Spain? Because it was part of the war with Islam. And after the Reconquista now is finally coming to an end, and all the Muslims have been beaten.
No, it's not pop. It's like sparkling water. It's basically carbonated water, different flavors. So this one is mango, no sugar. So it's just carbonated water, fizzy water. I prefer this over alcohol. So yeah, this is what I drink at nights. Is that what like Americans call it? Seltzer? I guess. I don't know. I just call it like carbonated soda. Yes, it is Masad fizzy mango. Yes. So bubbly is Masad. Okay, so yeah, so it's a seltzer. Yeah, I drink seltzers. I'm addicted to seltzers. I love them. My wine fridge has no alcohol, no wine in it. It's literally full of seltzers. So yeah.
Far south, they're all now in Granada, southern tip of Spain. All right. And this is under Ferdinand and Isabella, right? The unification of Spain as well. So now they're all holed up, but they're about 500,000 Muslims. Okay. And initially the Christians allowed them to keep their religion and keep their Sharia and live. But whenever they could, the Muslims would basically try to subvert and attack, including with Barbary pirates and with the Ottomans. They were like a fifth column, and they would attack Christians whenever they could and kill them, etc. So it came down to, you either become a Christian or you leave, go back to North Africa where your ancestors came from. And so now why become a Christian, right? Now, today it's seen as, oh, look at these intolerant, crazy Catholics. They just force their religion on everyone. No, the logic was, if they become Christians, this jihadist animus they have for us will have to go away, because now they're like us. Okay, that was the only logic. Okay, become like us and lose your hatred for us, or leave. So a fatwa came out. A fatwa was a decree by several respected Islamic jurists from North Africa who invoked the doctrine of taqiyya. Okay, and taqiyya means you can dissemble your true beliefs about Islam. You can say you're a Christian, but as long as you're truly a Muslim in your heart and you're doing this.
Okay, so someone was asking me to talk about this earlier. Oh, it was Dorman. Dorman, are you still here? No, Dorman's not here anymore. Okay, so um let me just make a note of this because earlier on in the live stream, Dorman wanted me to speak about Takia, and like that's not my expertise because my focus is more on Islamic terrorism and jihad. Um, so let me just make a quick note. Let me do a timestamp here. 1:07:21. Raymond talks about Takia. Okay. So I just made a note of that. And then Dorman's not here anymore, but I will make a video about it because they did request that. And I do keep track of all the comments and all the requests. So okay.
As a stratagem, you can do it. But continue to hate the infidel and whatever. Continue trying to plot against them. So a fatwa came out, and all 500,000 Muslims overnight became Christians, and they converted and were baptized. And long story short, the sources described them as being better Christians than the Christians. They were punctual to church and everything, but they were home reading the Quran to their children and preaching undying hatred for Christian Spain and still trying to plot. Okay, and that was the beginning of the Inquisition. Okay, because the Christians didn't know what to do. They didn't want to get rid of them because they converted. And what if he is a sincere Christian? And what if he's not?
But they weren't aware that they were being deceitful.
Yeah, finally, when they finally learned that they were being deceived, there's one guy who I quote, I think he's a priest from 15th century, and he says these people were better Christians than us, and yet in their hearts they still believed and were following the impostor, prophet. Okay.
Mm.
And so they were still a fifth column, but an even more dangerous one. And the Muslim sources say, and a lot of the people, very early cryptic references, a lot of the men who were engaged, and women, I suppose, who were engaged in taqiyya were burned because of the Inquisition. So that is really and there's elements of this with Jews as well. I think they're called, one's the Moriscos were the Moors who supposedly converted, but were still kind of practicing their Islam, and the Marranos, I believe, were the Jews who and when people talk about
No, I haven't met Raymond. At some point I would like to have him on my channel, when I grow and I get a bit more. Wyatt, so no, there's no channel named Jigamari. I mean, maybe I should make a channel. My user profile is Jigamari, but I haven't made a channel. I just like upload videos to that. But let me I'll figure that out. Here, let me find my Rumble account. I'll post the link to my Rumble account. It's just like my Rumble user account. Here you go. Yes, it is a Pokeball. So that's my Rumble user account, but I don't have like a channel or anything. Like, is that what I'm supposed to do? Rumble Studio here. I don't know. I'll figure it out. I'll figure out how to make a channel, I guess. But that's just like my user account on Rumble.
the Inquisition.
Pokemon Bowl with extra Charizard. Guys, I actually used to play Pokemon Go. I think I got up to I think it was like level 45 or something. I don't know, on Pokemon Go. Maybe higher. I literally don't remember. It was like years ago.
My point is, they always mention the Jews, but it was actually a lot more Muslims who were being tried for that very reason. And, Catholic Spain just ended up basically saying, you're either one of us or you have to go. because you're plotting against us, obviously, and the only way we can determine it is through an inquisition. I'm not trying to justify the Inquisition. I'm just trying to show you once again how Islam
I need to stop looking at the chat because you guys are making me randomly laugh. Like Raymond Ibrahim is literally talking about the Inquisition, and then someone says Pokemon Go is a Masonic, and it just yeah. Let's just assume everything is Masson at this point, and we're all getting our 7K. Guys, stop making me laugh. This is a serious. I'm trying to learn here, and I shouldn't be laughing when he's talking about the Inquisition. That was a horrible, horrible time in history. Okay. All right, let's continue.
is in the background, how it provoked a pretty bad reaction
But
from Christians.
you have called some of the behavior of Islam and the Muslims as they grew out from the Arabian Peninsula up into Europe as brutal and barbaric.
Mhm.
Would you describe the Inquisition in such ways?
Sure. I mean, the Inquisition, I'm sure there are innocent people who suffered. And the Inquisition was involved with the Knights of the Temple, for example. And that's a topic I've actually delved in very recently for my recent book, where these guys who had vowed and done everything to fight for Christendom were actually tortured by fellow Christians on baseless charges that were made by the king who wanted their gold. So I'm sure a lot of people were. I'm not justifying the Inquisition. I'm more interested in trying to show you how, once again, Islam gave rise to something that was very negative in Europe. Or even the Christopher Columbus. He sailed the ocean blue because he's looking for spices. People again don't understand the whole thing was about Islam. Okay.
Yeah, I know that's because but he couldn't go east anymore.
You couldn't go east because if you go east, you get killed, okay, by the Muslims, the Ottomans, and the Mamluks, and so forth. And not only that, in his own writings, he was doing this partially to help with the crusade. He wanted to find people who he thought would be Christians or converted to Christianity, and then they can be mobilized to go, like in a pincer movement, around and attack the Islamic world and liberate Jerusalem. So it was still that, or even the Portuguese before him, the Portuguese explorers, or usually Prince Henry, I think, is or Henrique II is the main one who's attributed with this sort of traveling around the world. He was a complete crusader. That was his motivation entirely.
Oh, really?
Yeah, entirely.
Oh,
that was it.
Wow.
You can't say that. Oh my god, guys. Oh my gosh. Okay, so yeah. So Christopher Columbus, my favorite Mossad. Columbus was a Mossad agent. Guys, like, you have to stop. Okay, both of you get bonus points because I'll tell you something. I was a politician for, I was in politics for 10 years. I was an elected official for 7. And it takes a lot of skill to have like a straight face, right? So, always keeping a straight face. And, whenever I was in the legislature, of course, I spoke very seriously. You're not allowed to have a personality as a politician, right? Like, in order to be a successful politician, you basically have to have the personality of cardboard, and you have to be that much interesting because, you're supposed to be just like non-controversial, and you're not supposed to have any ideas, and you're supposed to be politically correct and all that nonsense. And obviously, because I have a lot of opinions and I'm very opinionated, and I like to speak out in the face of injustice. I wasn't a very good politician because I wasn't able to, toe the line very much. However, I was always able to, manage to keep a very straight face regardless of like the crazy things that I heard. And believe me, guys, like I heard a lot of crazy stuff. So, that stoicism, very important. So the fact that you guys are just making me laugh with some of these comments, like the Christopher Columbus one, that caught me off guard. That caught me off guard. Yeah, Ice Kitty, you're right. Like a 1 hour. Okay, you know what? A 1 hour video will not be 5 hours. We're at a pretty good ratio. So this video is roughly 2 hours. We're about 1 hour and 11 minutes in. So we have like, I think, another like, I don't know, 40, 50 minutes to go. So hopefully, we'll be done soon ish, in an hour or so. I don't know. But yeah, the two of you with your Christopher Columbus is yeah, okay, all right. Let's continue.
You see how Islam is just embedded in Europe's history, and so many
it's
events.
been completely taken out.
Yeah, events were a reaction to it.
Wow. So what about then the rise of the Ottomans? What year is remind me what year Constantinople is
1453, May 29, when it's conquered.
Yeah. And so what happened? That was that a very bloody, brutal, like the rest of it, or what's the story of the sacking of Constantinople?
Okay, so I mentioned the Seljuk Turks, who were Turks, and they were the ones who were mainly during the First Crusade and a little bit afterwards. And then the Ottomans were more Turks. And the names Ottoman and Seljuk, these are the names of the founders. So Ottomans is their founder, their forefather Osman is his name, and the other guy was Seljuk, but they're all Turks. And they rose in that area very close to Constantinople, and they eventually took over and consolidated all the Turkish tribes under them, and the Seljuks were gone, and they became the chief power at the time. There were really two powers, the Ottomans in Turkey, and in Egypt you had the Mamluks, who were slave soldiers, and Egypt kept importing them, and then eventually they took over. Anyways, and they were contending rivals, the Ottomans and the Mamluks, until the Ottomans actually beat the Mamluks in around 1517 and absorbed all of that whole area. So the Ottomans were definitely the scourge of more modern times. Okay, so from around 1400 up until 1683, they're at Vienna, right? They're surrounding Vienna.
I can't tell if this comment is serious or not, but when does he get to the part that Muslims discovered North America, guys? You have to stop with that. No, they're already like, but it's so messed up because they're already claiming that like they discovered North America and they built North America. It's like the weirdest like historical revisionism I've ever. Let's see when Raymond gets to the part about Muslims discovering North America. Let's see.
For those hundreds of years, the Ottomans completely devastated the Balkans, conquered so many regions, Greece, Bulgaria, Albania, all these regions. Hungary was one of its main enemies, but it also got conquered for about 150 years. And, like I said, it goes all the way up until 1683, and now they're around Vienna, again, encircling it with 200,000. And I'll tell you a very interesting story about Vienna because it's very applicable to today. Something's happening today about this. But in the Battle of Vienna in 1683, you have something like 200,000 Muslim Ottomans surrounding it. And on their way, they destroyed and devastated everything, killing 30,000 Christian captives, etc. And they were about to breach Vienna. It was about 2 months into it, or even less, and right before they did, on September 12th, the King of Poland came, John Sobieski III, with something like 65,000 fighters, and they were on the top of a hill, and he very clearly says this is about Christianity and Islam, and they're trying to take it and so forth. I have a whole chapter about that too.
I can't. Could you imagine someone like watching this replay and they're not looking at the live chat and then they're gonna think that I'm laughing? Could you imagine if like Raymond just like randomly tunes in and then he's not looking at the live chat and he just sees me laughing uncontrollably? Guys, I also want to say, there, so there's like over 1,000 people who are watching this live stream on X. And to everyone who's watching the live stream on X, my apologies. You guys can't see the chat on YouTube. And the reason I'm laughing is because of the comments in the YouTube chat. So if you want to see what people are saying, you're welcome to join us on YouTube. But yeah, so to everyone watching me on X, I swear, there's a good reason why I'm laughing. I'm not laughing at what Raymond is saying. It's what people in YouTube are saying, and this is the most fun chat that I've ever had since I started live streaming. So yeah, there we go. It's been a very interesting chat, and I'm glad you guys are having fun.
Dude, Sword Scimitar, all these big ones. And then they had, thunderous cavalry charge, and they defeated and the Ottomans and lifted the siege. And of course, Vienna was grateful very much. So since then, they've been trying to put up a monument or a statue for Sobieski on that hill in Vienna where he came down. And a lot of Viennese and Austrians wanted, and of course, Poles wanted, and it's a way of thanking the Poles for what they did. But the city council of Vienna said that's too Islamophobic and it might offend the Muslims.
Yeah. When was that?
This is happening right now. This is something actually that was just reported like a few weeks ago. Okay.
Okay, guys. So all jokes aside, this part is important. So what he just said about how talking about history is Islamophobic, that's true. That's part of the historical revisionism. There was actually a Yazidi woman who wanted to speak about her experience of being captured by ISIS, Islamic terrorists, and she was basically used as a sex slave, and it was just absolutely horrible. She was raped, she was tortured. She thankfully, was able to find a way to escape. And then she was supposed to do like a speaking tour in Canada to talk about her experience as a Yazidi genocide survivor. And her speaking tour was canceled because Muslim lobby groups in Canada said that if she talks about her experience, that will contribute to Islamophobia. So keep that in mind. When they murder infidels in the name of Allah and Islam and jihad, right? Not all Muslims. It's just the bad apples. So, there's that. But then when people who are victims of Islamic terrorism try to raise awareness about their life experience and talk about what happened to them, that's a no-no because that could lead to Islamophobia, right? So I'm going to go back a little bit here because this part very, very important, and this is a pattern. This is a just a pattern that has been happening for a while, and so in order to combat the disinformation out there, it's important to recognize the pattern and, of course, the tactics. So this is one of those tactics here where they basically try to silence people who just want to speak objectively about the facts by saying it's Islamophobic to talk about the history of the Muslim colonizers.
They devastated the Balkans, conquered so many regions, Greece, Bulgaria, Albania, all these regions. Hungary was one of its main enemies, but it also got conquered for about 150 years. And, like I said, it goes all the way up until 1683, and now they're around Vienna, again, encircling it with 200,000. And I'll tell you a very interesting story about Vienna because it's very applicable to today. Something's happening today about this. But in the Battle of Vienna in 1683, you have something like 200,000 Muslim Ottomans surrounding it. And on their way, they destroyed and devastated everything, killing 30,000 Christian captives, etc. And they were about to breach Vienna. It was about 2 months into it, or even less, and right before they did, on September 12th, the king of Poland came, John Sobieski III, with something like 65,000 fighters. And they were on the top of a hill. And he very clearly says this is about Christianity and Islam, and they're trying to take it and so forth. I have a whole chapter about that too. It's Sword of Scimitar, all these big ones. And then they had, thunderous cavalry charge, and they defeated and the Ottomans and lifted the siege. And of course, Vienna was grateful very much. So since then, they've been trying to put up a monument or a statue for Sobieski on that hill in Vienna where he came down. And a lot of Viennese and Austrians want it, and of course Poles want it, and it's a way of thanking the Poles for what they did. But the city council of Vienna said that's too Islamophobic and it might offend the Muslims. Yeah.
When was that?
This is happening right now. This is something actually that was just reported like a few weeks ago. Okay, and we're not going to have it because it agitates Islamophobia. And then you look into in Vienna, and it's like a bastion of Islam. I didn't know this, or until recently, there are more Muslim students than Catholic students. And Vienna, of course, was a Catholic nation. It was a seat of the Holy Roman Empire, which was why it was so important to Muslims to conquer. Like Rome.
Today, there are more Muslim students in Vienna than
Vienna, and constantly the mosques are being busted for teaching hate.
Last year, there was a foiled plot on a Taylor Swift concert.
Yeah. But I mean, there's a lot. I wrote an article, and there's so many things. And, these students tried to shoot up a Christian class, and they said because killing Christians get us into heaven. That's what the Muslims said, the students.
So I actually visited Vienna in, when was it? I was in Austria for 3 weeks in 2012. So 3 weeks in Austria, 2012, that would be what, like 13 years ago. And that was when the mass immigration was like just starting. And even back then, I remember when I was in Austria, Austrian people, right? Like native Austrian people, the white people, they were saying to me, don't go to this place, don't go to that place. And then, I was like, what do you mean? Like, they were like, no, these are no-go zones, don't go there. And I decided to check one place out just, to see what they were talking about. I was young, I was naive. I was like, what do you mean no-go zones? This is Austria. Austria is supposed to be a safe country. And I went to one of these no-go zones. This was 13 years ago. And even though I'm from the Middle East, I had never felt more uncomfortable and more unsafe being in that no-go zone in Vienna. That was 13 years ago. So I can only imagine how much worse it's become. And this situation has been around for a while, and people have been quietly whispering about it. And the only reason that no one has said anything out loud is because everyone has been afraid of being, canceled for Islamophobia. But, even like 13 years ago, Austrians were worried about these no-go zones, and they were warning travelers because Austrians, literally like some of the nicest people on earth, very welcoming, very, very friendly. I love Austria. But yeah, they were warning me about no-go zones. And then when I went to go check one out, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is a problem. And again, that was 13 years ago. So I can only imagine how much worse it is today. And of course, the fact that Raymond is now talking about how bad it is. There were early warning signs, but no one, there were early warning signs, but no one really wanted to speak about it because, Islamophobia.
So basically what's going on is Vienna is willing to spit in the eyes of the ancestors of the people who liberated them to humor the descendants of the people who were attacking them and who are themselves currently criminalizing Vienna, because there's all these reports of how crime and rape has exponentially skyrocketed since this influx of Muslim migrants. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing. And a final, about these battles, because this is related. In France, also about a couple of months ago, a couple of Muslims tried to bomb something in Poitiers by Tours, Why? Because they wanted to avenge the defeat at the
You're
battle.
kidding me.
No, they were smarting about that. Still, this battle, most Westerners don't even remember. Again, showing you the long view of Muslims. They wanted,
1,300 years
yeah,
later.
yeah.
Wow. Seeing as we're recording in America, I just read the biography of Captain John Smith, who set up
Oh,
the
to fight Turks.
well, yeah, he set up the first successful colony at Jamestown, and he would before that he's a man from Lincolnshire,
Mhm,
and he went to fight the
mhm,
Turks in Hungary and was captured,
mhm,
became a slave, was taken all the way across to eastern Turkey, eventually escaped, walked up to Moscow, then walked all the way across Europe again to his friends in Hungary, and eventually, actually, he didn't even go home then. At that point, he went off and went on some other adventures. But it for me, it goes to show that actually, even the founding of America. I mean, you mentioned the Barbary
mhm,
Wars earlier. That this stuff would very much have been in the imagination of the founders
mhm,
of this country,
mhm,
as
mhm.
we've seemed to have forgotten all of that stuff.
But isn't it ironic? John Smith, I mean, he's mostly famous for what? Pocahontas,
Yeah,
right? But here, even this guy has this long, sordid affair with Islam, right?
yeah.
And since you mentioned it, and since I've been talking about history and I went up to 1683, let me actually finish it off with Barbary, because that's very important.
Yeah.
People don't realize it. I mean, think about this. America's first war as a nation after gaining independence from your country was was against Muslims.
This is
And
with
why?
Jefferson. Yeah.
Yeah, Jefferson. And why? Because they were using the very same logic that all the other Muslims that I quoted, the jihad, etc. You're an infidel. And so they start attacking and plundering American vessels sometime in, I think,
So I actually heard somewhere, I don't know if it was someone who commented or something. Apparently, the reason that the Americans even like built a navy and created a navy was in order to deal with the Muslim pirates. Someone put that in the comments in one of my videos. I made a note to go and look that up, but yeah, that's what that person said, but I have no idea if it's true or not. Yeah, I think it was the Marines. Someone, yeah, they basically said the Marines were created to deal with the Muslim pirates like 300, 400 years ago. Um, I think that's what they said. So I mean, I haven't looked into it. Oh, am I correct? Okay, so I didn't know that. There you go. So I made a note of that to like look into that. But I mean, I don't have the full details. But I just find it really. So I think that's where Raymond is going right now when he's talking about all this, and Thomas Jefferson. So I'll go back a little bit, but I just wanted to kind of like highlight that because this part here is new to me, so I'm very interested to learn more about this
His
part.
friends in Hungary, and eventually, actually, he didn't even go home then. At that point, he went off and went on some other adventures. But it for me, it goes to show that actually, even the founding of America. I mean, you mentioned the Barbary Wars earlier. That this stuff would very much have been in the imagination of the founders of this country, as we've seemed to have forgotten all of that stuff.
but isn't it ironic? John Smith, I mean, he's mostly famous for what? Pocahontas,
Yeah,
right? But here, even this guy has this long, sordid affair with Islam, right?
yeah.
And since you mentioned it, and since I've been talking about history and I went up to 1683, let me actually finish it off with Barbary, because that's very important.
Yeah.
People don't realize it. I mean, think about this. America's first war as a nation after gaining independence from your country was was against Muslims.
This is
And
with
why?
Jefferson. Yeah.
Yeah, Jefferson. And why? Because they were using the very same logic that all the other Muslims that I quoted, the jihad, etc. You're an infidel. And so they start attacking and plundering American vessels sometime in, I think, 1780 or something, right? Soon after the Revolutionary War. And long story short, Jefferson and John Adams, they
Guys, no. Why would you do this? Why would someone in the YouTube chat ask Grok if they're Islamophobe? You're in the wrong platform. Grok doesn't respond to YouTube comments. You have to do that on X. Goldie, go to X if you want to ask that question. There's no grok on YouTube. What are you doing? Please, like. Oh my god. Yes, Jefferson was Mossad. Jefferson was Mossad
With
too.
the ambassador from Barbary, I think Tripoli, Abdul something.
Oh, I'm your favorite boomer tuber. Thank you. Yes, I am old. I am old. Like I don't hide the fact, guys. I'm not 20. Like I don't know why people think calling me a boomer is like a bad thing. Like I'm old, guys. I am an old person. I'm old. I have gray hairs. I have backaches. I have wrinkles. I have it all.
I have it in my book, and they say, "What have you? We're willing to be friends and trade. Why are you attacking us? What have we done to you?" And then Jefferson he wrote a letter to Congress, which we still have, with the ambassador's response. And to paraphrase it, he basically told him, "Our Quran says and our Prophet says you're our enemy, and it's our right and duty to attack and plunder and kill you and enslave you wherever we can find you." And most people don't realize that he was actually paraphrasing Quran 9:5, which is known in Islam as the sword verse. And it says, lay in wait wherever you can find the infidel and ambush them and kill them and enslave them. Okay. So anyway, so it's the same mentality, same logic. America's very first war, it just became a nation. It hasn't even had its first president yet, George Washington, and it gets dragged into eventually 2 wars. Okay. The first is the first Barbary War in 1801, and that drags on, and again in 1815. Okay. So so here, look, we fast forwarded almost 1,200 years since the Battle of Yarmouk, right? In 636, now we're in 1815. And it's the same mentality, same logic. And it's the same thing that they tell us. Islam doesn't mean that. Islam means peace. Okay? And that's how effective they've been. They've gone that narrative to become dominant, even though the long storied past of history is it's an unwavering continuity of Islamic hostility based on Islamic teachings and jihad.
Yeah. So we'll come up to the present day, but before we do, seeing as you've mentioned the Quran, I guess there's you have also said you're not a theologian, so I
mean, I'm being
remember
modest,
that.
Right.
Where do you think this comes from within Islam, and is it the
Wait, what? Someone said that I'm gone. You guys lost me. What? Did my live stream cut out or is someone trolling? Oh my gosh. Okay, so someone was trolling. Okay, someone was don't do that. Don't do that, guys. I've had issues in the past where my live stream just like cuts out and then I go black. Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay. All right. See? I'm paying attention always. Okay. All right. Let's continue.
behavior? Is it the example of Muhammad or the example of these first early Muslim warriors? And I think it's an important one because we look at Islamism today, and it's clearly, we talk about ISIS and all these Muslim Brotherhood, and we talk about Israel and Hamas, and it's clear that there's an aspect of Islam that is like the scripture you just cited, that is I guess violent, and there's a contention there, that this idea of peaceful Muslims, moderate Muslims, and I guess I'm not sure exactly what my question here is, but
the origins of all this, how it all starts.
Like how much is this from the Quran? How much is this from Muhammad? What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, okay, it's all you have to understand how Islamic law works. Okay, so according to standard Islamic teaching amongst Sunnis, who are 90% of the Muslim world, the twin sources of authority are the Quran, which is understood to be the literal words of Allah, and then what's called the Hadith, Okay, plural it's ahadith, but I'm going to say hadiths to anglicize it. And all they are vast volumes and volumes and volumes of what Muhammad supposedly said and did. Okay, and according to the Muslim, scientists, as they call themselves, the ulama, they rank them. There's what's called sahih, meaning it's correct, it's authentic. He did say this, and that takes on almost the same value as the Quran. Okay, and there's a lot of that. Now, based on those two things, hatred for the non-Muslim is unequivocal and continuously documented. War on them as jihad, continuously documented. Treating the non-Muslim who gets conquered as a dhimmi, which means they have to live as a second-class citizen and pay tribute, unequivocally documented. These are totally enshrined based on the Quran and the words of Muhammad. Okay, his example. And Muslims, the word Sunni, I mentioned them. The Sunni means like the example. So a Sunni is trying to follow the example of Muhammad. So if Muhammad waged war on infidels, that's what we have to do as well. So it's unequivocally clear. A person will tell you that no, Islam doesn't teach violence, etc. He's either really, really ignorant or being very, very, very deceptive. And it could be one or the other. But if you've taken the time to study them, as I have in their original languages, and that's another problem. If you look at the Quran today, they're mistranslating it intentionally. They add words that don't exist. So for example, Quran 9:29 will say, which literally says, fight the people of the book, which means Jews and Christians, until they pay tribute and feel themselves subdued. Okay, and that's the teaching that's what justifies jizya. It uses the word jizya. A lot of English now Quran translations say, fight the people of the book if they fight.
Wait, did someone in the YouTube comments just say, I like how the British is telling someone from the Middle East what Islam is? Are you inbred or are you just retarded? Because Raymond Ibrahim is from Israel. Sorry, he's from Egypt. Raymond Ibrahim is from Egypt, and just because he doesn't speak with an accent doesn't mean he's not from the area. It's literally like how people are like, "Oh, you're not from the Middle East. You don't speak with an accent." And I'm like, "How stupid are you? Like not everyone from the Middle East speaks with an accent." So she's like your low IQ is really showing right now. Like you're embarrassing yourself. Your family tree probably looks more like a circle, just saying.
You first. Okay. And okay, so now it doesn't look so bad. This is again defensive war. This is just war. The original doesn't say they fight you first, it says you attack them. So there's unfortunately a lot of playing around with Islamic scriptures intended to deceive infidels. But yeah, that it's that simple. That's what the two twin pillars of Islam's authority,
Right.
the Quran and Hadith, say.
And the Quran is the word of God. And
Right.
I read the Quran a few years ago, and what the difficult thing for me, apart from certain of the scriptures like the ones mentioned already, is that it says throughout it you must take this literally and you can't swear. So the idea of a sort of Islamic Reformation against this seems to be tricky. Having said that, and I'll come back to Europe, but I look around the world now, and where I have hope with relations between the Western world and the Islamic world is.
Yeah, but the host isn't talking about anything. The host is asking questions and Raymond is answering. So, I mean, if anyone is watching this and thinking that the host is teaching us about Islam, my argument still stands. They're either inbred or retarded, or I don't know, maybe possibly both, because the host is being a good host. The host is engaging in a conversation that is encouraging Raymond Ibrahim to talk about various things. So yeah, it's just honestly like the low IQ of some people who are unable to understand how a conversation works. But then again, like that person is probably just used to, you know, just being like spoken at, right? Like spoken at by imams or whatever. That person's probably not used to having a back and forth conversation. So that's why he's probably confused about the conversation.
The leaders of, let's say, the Emirati leaders, where the signatories of the Abraham Accords, and I see, oh, actually, these are people who are taking Islamism seriously. They recognize the problem. They're even calling the Westerners out for not taking it serious enough. The Emiratis have been fantastic on this, particularly Mohammed bin Zayed. For me, the hope is that these people are interpreting the scripture in a certain way that means that there will be relations much improved from everything you've described in history. Do you think I'm right to feel this way?
No, I think there's room for optimism for a number of reasons. You know, the insurmountable hurdle is what I just described. Okay, the texts are so black and white. You know, it literally says in the Quran that if you're a Muslim, you have to hate non-Muslims. And I've watched cleric after cleric say things like, yeah, even if you're married, because Islam allows Muslim men to marry Christian women or Jews. And he'll say, yeah, you can marry them and have fun with them sexually, but you have to hate them and you have to let them know you hate them. Okay. That's how much it's so ironclad. Now, you know, and this is the whole question about what's a moderate Muslim. Okay. So yeah, I don't believe in a moderate Islam because it's just not there. It's black and white. But I do believe in moderate Muslims because humans are subjective and they can do whatever they want, right? They can believe, they can just reinterpret it their own way, they can ignore it. I mean, so I believe you have that. It exists. It's just, it's very hard to doctrinally justify it, okay, against the hardliners. That's why they always end up winning the arguments because it goes back to what the Quran says and what the Hadith says, okay? But there's all kinds of leeway and you know, ways to get around this, I suppose. But you're right. A lot of people, what they don't understand, they say we want a reformation of Islam, and what they don't get is actually something very akin to the Protestant Reformation has been happening, and it's what led to radicalism. Okay, not because Protestantism is radical, but the same methodology, and I'll explain what I'm saying. Protestantism essentially was, you know, sola scriptura. We're done with clergies and whatever. We just want the Bible. Okay, and Islam before for a while has always been, yeah, the Quran and the Sunnah, but most people were illiterate Muslims, and you had to rely on the ulama and the scholars and the sheikhs, etc. And there were schools of law, and there still are, which could, you know, modify teachings certain ways or not. Well, like the Protestant Reformation, you know, since modern times, now the Quran is available on the internet, okay, and Muslims are literate and they can read Arabic. And what's happening is they're becoming more and more going back to the scriptures and not caring so much about what the schools of law, they're called madhahib, say. So it's almost like a sola scriptura mentality, but the but the result is the exact opposite. Because if you're a Christian who just goes by the Bible, well, you're going to turn the other cheek and you're going to love your neighbor and you're going to believe in monogamy, et cetera, et cetera. If you go strictly with what I'm talking about, the Quran and the Hadith, well, that's where all the hatred comes and the violence and basically a 7th century Bedouin mentality. I mean, that's what's captured there.
Yeah.
So what people really want is not not a reformation of Islam, which I don't think is possible. They want an enlightenment, which was basically, you know, not even caring what the scriptures say and just rising above it. And, you know, how you rationalize that, people can do whatever they want. I mean, look amongst Christians, you have all kinds of different beliefs and teachings, even though one Christian will say, no, the Bible says this. And so of course it can be done. But you're going to need, and the leaders, you have to remember, they can do what they can do. But a lot of the, you know, the people are, you know, Saudi Arabia is our good friend and ally. And I know they're also sometimes part of these accords, et cetera. But they're also the chief disseminators of radical Islam. Okay, they're the ones who fund this. You know, if you go to a mosque in England and you find it has radical, hateful books, it's coming from Saudi Arabia. You know, so it's, and again, we have to contend with this idea of taqiyya, Islam.
Or, you know, also coming from the Islamic Republic occupying Iran. Let's not forget about that.
Allowing deception of the infidel as needed. Okay, so we're in a weak phase, then we have to, you know, be accommodating to them and not hate them openly. You know, so all that needs to be taken into consideration. But having said that, I think if Western powers or the non-Muslim world just dropped the act and said, look, we understand your religion, we understand it has violence, and we understand this, but we're not going to tolerate it. And, you know, in other words, call them out and stop playing this game as if, no, it's not there. It is there. Let's confront.
It's there, but when we try to confront it, those same groups that are funded by Saudi Arabia and Qatar and the Muslim Brotherhood and the Islamic Republic, those groups then cry Islamophobia. And you have to ask yourselves, why is it that only Islamophobia exists? There's no such thing as Christian phobia or Hindu phobia or, you know, Jewish phobia or I don't know, Buddhist phobia or Zoroastrian phobia. Why is there only a phobia for one particular religion? And that particular religion is the one that is literally the most violent one in the world and the one that goes around chopping people's heads off in the name of Allah, right? So it's almost like they created the word Islamophobia preemptively to silence people from criticizing the fact that there is a violent element to their religion. And when you try to confront it, right? When you try to confront it, you're accused of being a bigot or racist, even though Islam is not a race, or Islamophobic, or whatever the case may be, right? So this is a very good point that Raymond is making here. You know, it has to be confronted, but the challenge is when you try to confront it, the Islamist groups come after you.
And the leaders, you have to remember, they can do what they can do, but a lot of the people, Saudi Arabia is our good friend and ally, and I know they're also sometimes part of these accords, etc. But they're also the chief disseminators of radical Islam. Okay, they're the ones who fund this. If you go to a mosque in England and you find it has radical, hateful books, it's coming from Saudi Arabia. So it's, and again, we have to contend with this idea of taqiyya, Islam allowing deception of the infidel as needed. Okay, so we're in a weak phase, then we have to, be accommodating to them and not hate them openly. So all that needs to be taken into consideration. But having said that, I think if Western powers or the non-Muslim world just dropped the act and said, look, we understand your religion, we understand it has violence, and we understand this, but we're not going to tolerate it. And, in other words, call them out and stop playing this game as if, no, it's not there. It is there. Let's confront it and let's work around it.
I suspect if you were to do that, then a lot of the problems might go away.
Yeah.
Because if you call it out and everyone's like, actually, we better behave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you keep acting, no, your religion means peace. There's nothing wrong with your religion. Okay. So you're not addressing the problem.
Well, this brings me to what's going, big scandal in my country, the grooming gang scandal, where tens of thousands of young...
Rotherham,
exactly. Young white underclass girls, predominantly white, there's some other Hindu girls and different groups, but mainly white, have been targeted because they are, quote, kafir. And kafir or kafar?
Kafir singular, kafar is plural.
Kafar. And it's still now contentious. You can't call it what it is because the perpetrators are predominantly Pakistani heritage grooming gangs. Even calling them a grooming gang isn't quite. It's the rape gangs is what they really are. We're just sort of unable to call out that kind of stuff. We also have with Islamist attack after Islamist attack. This is kind of across Europe. It's a problem, and this is what I kind of want to. Your whole history. I wonder how we can make it relevant to what's going on now, because you've sort of given a historical context, and Muslims are moving to Europe en masse in hugely growing Muslim populations, particularly in contrast with the declining, let's say, quote unquote, indigenous population, Christian population, and Christianity is also on the decline anyway amongst those. So I wanted your perspective on how we might find social cohesion today in Europe.
Sure. So let me give you some more context, because you're right. The history I told you, and there's still elements of it that we need to talk about to make sense of what you're discussing. So one of the earliest motifs amongst Islamic scholars, and this goes back to about the 8th and 9th centuries, was that, and I hate to put it this way, but that's how they put it, like white women want it. Okay. And white women are desirable, and they're the number. And I was telling you about the Vikings bringing slaves. They wanted fair slaves. This is a well-documented thing that goes back to Muhammad. During one campaign, the campaign against, it's called Tabuk, where he was supposed to fight the Eastern Roman empires, which would be Greeks. He actually tried to cajole men to join him by saying, don't you want the people of yellow? and he talks about the women, how beautiful they are. But yellow, I assume, means hair. A lot of people try to understand what that means. Does it mean hair, fair skin, whatever? So there's a long kind of like this almost like sadomasochistic thing of presenting white women as wanting it, and just like, okay, so now fast forward, and what you're talking about, believe it or not, because I've looked into it very closely, and the Muslims, the Pakistanis, and whatnot, they use the same exact logic, and they quote that, and they say, "Yeah, Islam already told us these people want it." And
So someone asked, have I seen Cam Higby debate Muslims leftists at universities? No. Um, because like I'll be honest, I'm not really interested in the theological debate or anything like that. Like my channel is focused more on um Islamic terrorism, jihad, politics, the Middle East, right? So um I mean, if people want to debate religion, they can go and debate religion. But that really has no bearing or impact on Islamic terrorism, which is based on observable facts and based on history, right? And so something that's like a proven fact in history is non-debatable. So, I mean, I I don't really watch those because I just feel like it's a waste of my time. And like I don't like listening to stupid people. So that's why I just like I can't listen to anyone debate Islamists or leftists because if I listen to that, I feel like I lose brain cells. Like I would much rather listen to someone like Raymond Ibrahim and learn something about history. So I guess it could be interesting for like entertainment purposes, maybe. So to everyone watching the live stream, like if you're interested, definitely go check out Cam Higby and see what he does. But again, like the theological side of things is I'm not interested in that. Like my focus is more on, the Islamic terrorists who yell Allahu Akbar while they blow themselves up or chop people's heads off, right? And how to prevent that from happening in Western societies. Yeah. Oh, Bridget Gabriel, I've done several live streams with Bridget Gabriel as well. So if you go and you check out my playlist, the Goldie Show on my YouTube channel, you'll find a few live streams where I've actually played several of Bridget Gabriel's interviews. She's fantastic. I love her.
that's what they're for, and they like it, et cetera, et cetera. So just something to keep in
It's
back.
an actual quote from Muhammad.
Yeah,
And in a hadith.
yeah. The quote is that he basically said,
Oh wait, someone on X asked if I've seen like some random person talk about me. No. Um I I know I piss off a lot of jihadis or other people. I don't care. If anything when they do that, it basically like that's basically free promotion for me. So again, like I was a politician. I was in politics for 10 years. I was an elected official for 7 years. There is literally nothing that anyone can say about me that would upset me or negatively impact me in any way, shape, or form. The fact that they're talking about me is actually, I mean, I don't even know who these people are, but if they're talking about me, that means I'm on the right path because I've definitely hit a few nerves. So there you go. That's basically free press for me. So whoever that person is, thank you for being so triggered by my videos that you felt the need to make a video to talk about it, and you're basically just exposing yourself for the jihadi you are. Anyways, yeah. So yeah, no, I don't watch all of the I don't watch any of the jihadis who criticize me. I'm sure there's tons of them out there, but that's irrelevant to me. My focus is just on raising awareness, and that's it. Yeah.
don't you want the people of yellow? Like, come join me on this raid so we can get pretty blonde women, basically. Right?
Okay.
Okay. And but even I'm saying it starts with them, but you find iterations of this all throughout. Okay. Most caliphs, people don't know this, but even amongst the Ottomans, but especially in Spain, their last caliph was something like 99% white. Why? Because every sultan would mate with white women, and he would, be half diluted.
Sorry, someone asked about Ayan Hirsi Ali. I've actually featured Ayan Hirsi Ali as well. in my previous podcasts. So definitely go check that out. You'll see the ones where I feature Ayan Hirsi Ali and her speeches as well. I love her. She's phenomenal. I encourage everyone to follow her.
So at the very end, a lot of these sultans were essentially blonde hair and blue eyed, but they're Muslim sultans, right? So this is so anyway. My point is this: so you bring a Muslim population that thinks this way, and you put them in England. What do you think is going to happen? And you teach women to be promiscuous or whatever, free love, etc. What's going to happen? This is going to happen, obviously. Okay. As far as you're asking me, how to get past all that, and the thing with England and I mean, you telling me is the attack on sense, is free speech getting that bad? Because it seems like you can't call out, like you just said, you can't even call something what it is anymore. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole other
and people being
conversation.
arrested, and it's like anyway, so it's just amazing to me. You compare and contrast what I've been talking about, which is Europeans, King Richard, speaking of England, who fought tooth and nail to keep Islam out of Europe. Okay, and now all of a sudden, and this is why history and doctrine is important, because they've told us the exact opposite of what I'm saying, which is, no, Islam is wonderful, it means peace. What are you talking about? Let's bring them in by the boatloads or whatever, millions. And guess what? You see what's happening, because it's just a continuum of what always happened. So on the one hand, you have Muslims walking in perfect step with their ancestors, and now you have Westerners in perfect discontinuity with their ancestors. They've just completely rejected.
Or perhaps continuity with the ancestors pre the first invasion from of Islam into Europe. So this is like, if you go back 1,500 years,
right?
Do you see some sort of parallel with that, do you think, or is that a stretch?
Well, no, because there was no time in history where Islam tried to get into Europe that they said, come on in. They just either lost and fought,
right,
like in Spain.
Right.
Okay, but they always resisted.
So this is the first time they've been
invited. So this is unprecedented,
in.
What's happening, where, you're inviting them, and they're acting the same way as usual, and your people are suffering, and then you buckle down even more and stifle your people and keep bringing in more, and it's just like, what's really going on?
Then is there anywhere else in the world outside of Europe where there is where Muslims and Christians and Jews have been able to live side by side?
In Europe, you have countries like Albania and maybe Montenegro, and
we had in the Bosnian War, we had concentration camps with Muslims rounded up.
Yeah,
so it's not really a great place to look. I don't think.
No. But by and large, those countries until now, you can see Muslims and Christians living side by side. But the reason, honestly, is the Muslims are not very Muslim, and the Christians aren't even very Christian. In other words, the people there are very secular. You look at a Muslim in a lot of these European countries, and they just they don't know the first thing about. I've talked to them, and they don't don't know the first thing about Islam, but they're Muslim by name. So I think that's one of the reasons that you can have that. Look, if Muslims are in power, and they're the dominant group, and they're upholding and following Islamic teachings, then by nature, the non-Muslim, the Jew, the Christian, is going to have to live as a second-class citizen. Okay, so like in Egypt, for example, which was a very Christian nation, and now it's 90% Muslim, let's say 10% Christian. Okay, so there's constant persecution, but there's all these laws against churches. Okay, so I just read a report, finally came out, the numbers. And long story short, Christians are always complaining we need churches, and they're not allowing them to build churches. And if you go back to Islamic law, Islamic teaching, which I was discussing as based on the hadith and so forth, you're not supposed to. Christians who are conquered, they can live and pay tribute, but they can't build their churches. So until today, in a modern nation like Egypt, you have that law, or kernels of it still exist. Okay, and it finally came out that when you do all the number crunching, for every one church that Christians have, Muslims have 60. If you even up their numbers as population. I mean, think about how obvious discrimination that is. Okay, and but Egypt publicly will tell everyone in the world, no, we treat our citizens the same. Okay, they all have the same religious freedom. But 1 to 60, that ratio is pretty telling. So, but Egypt, its constitution, Article 2 says we trace our legislation to Sharia, and so it's even it's in the constitution. So as long as Muslims are going to live, it's just plain and simple. The Islamic law, Islamic teaching is black and white, and it is divisive, it is discriminatory, and it does incite violence against the non-Muslim. That's it. Okay. Now, To what extent Muslims are going to enforce that or live up to it? Okay, maybe some don't care, and in that case, you can live with them. All right. I often give a good analogy. I try to understand what a moderate Muslim is. Okay, and it's the Nazi analogy. Okay, which is a little,
Here
but
we go.
hear me out. Hear me out.
Oh dear.
No, it doesn't sound so bad when you hear me out. Okay, so he went there. No, no, no. All right. Here's what I'm saying. Nazism is a body of teachings. It's an ideology, okay, and it has supremacy, white supremacist ideas in it, okay, and it has other teachings, whatever. National Socialists, they come to power, and then you got a guy like Oskar Schindler, all right, and he was a Nazi. He was an actual ranking Nazi, and you know his story. He saved Jews and etc. And he went out of his way, and it's no small threat to himself, but he was a Nazi. Okay, so my question to you is, what he did, his good deed, was that an aspect of his personality, of him rising above Nazism, or was he practicing a moderate form of Nazism? Okay, I think you're going to tell me he just rose above it and did not implement the supremacist aspect, killing Jews, whatever. Okay, he rose above it, and that's how we have to understand Muslims and moderate Muslims. Okay, the Islam has its negative teachings, its violence, its divisiveness, its hate. Okay, if a Muslim doesn't act that way, and I know there's Muslims who don't do that, okay, and they're good people, is that because they're practicing moderate Islam, or is it because they rose above it? See, when you say that, all of a sudden people want to say, no, it's a moderate Islam, but they won't do that with Nazism. They'll say, no, Nazism is what it is. It's a violent supremacist creed.
I think the obvious problem with that analogy is that moderate Muslims who I've spoken to on this show, rather than rising above Islam, they'll appeal to other scripture. And then they'll say there's a contention here, there's a contradiction, so we're going to appeal to this and this one where it says,
right. They will do that. You're right. But what I'm saying is,
which is not, you can't do that with Nazism. You can't appeal to another side of Nazism.
Well, no, I would argue what's happening is they're being disingenuous. Okay, they're making an appeal, saying, "Oh no, there's a way around this," and I'm telling you, no, there isn't. Okay, so yeah, it would be like a Nazi telling you, no, wait, there's aspects of Nazism where allows for this, and you and I know there isn't. Yeah, okay, so give me an example of what they would say, for example.
Unfortunately, I'm not equipped enough to have this argument, but I would say that there's enough contradiction within the Quran that it's clear that they would have a problem where there might not be the same contradictions in Nazism. It's pretty clear cut what they thought about the Jews.
If you're okay, so if you're the kind of Muslim who is, I'm going to read the Quran and understand it my own way, and that's fine, then yeah, you can do that. But to be a true Sunni Muslim, that's not how it works. You have to follow the interpretation, the exegesis of the authorities, and all of them are unequivocal about the topics that we're discussing because they're so ironclad. So again, for example, there's a movement among Muslims, and it's a good movement. They're called Quranists. What they want to do is just the only book they look at is the Quran, and they're done with the Sunnah, the Hadith. And that would be great because honestly, a lot of the most troubling teachings come from the Hadith, not so much the Quran. The Quran is very poetic, okay? And so that would be a great thing, but they're a tiny, tiny minority. They're not even 1% of the Muslim population, okay? So you can do that, and they do exist, Muslims like that, and that's more power to them. But if you're being a standard, I'm a Sunni Muslim who's just following the traditions of my fathers, and I belong to one of the four madhahib. They have four schools of law, which are very, very similar. They just have nuanced differences, but they agree about what we're talking about, execute the apostate or punish him at least, blaspheming, etc., and keeping Christians and Jews suppressed, war on the infidel. These are non-negotiables. Okay, so if you're that kind of Muslim, yeah, I mean, I can say to the infidel, no, there's a way around this, but that would be like me telling someone who's ignorant of Nazism, and I'd be like, no, in Nazism, there's room for Jews and and non-Aryans to live in peace, and okay, you'll believe it. But I'm just saying that they can say whatever they want and they can believe it, and there can be large numbers of Muslims who live that way, but this is not in accordance with Islamic mainstream Islam. Just like a Nazi can say, no, I love, non-Aryans, but yeah, that's not in accordance with Nazi ideology.
Right. We mentioned right at the beginning of this conversation that we would look at your work on exposing the terrible treatment of Christians by Muslims around the world. Now, it's been an amazing, long conversation so far. So I appreciate that,
Sure.
that we're opening, breaching a new topic. But
Yeah.
what perhaps we can touch on some of the most recent things, and then I'll put listeners to go to your reporting on your website.
Sure.
But maybe we just stick with 2025 and what's happening. We've had some reports from Congo, Nigeria, and even Syria, although it's very mixed reporting on Syria, and I'm not sure how true it is there. But I wondered, if you could explain
Sure.
what's going on.
So, the persecution of Christians, and it really dovetails wonderfully with what we're talking about, because it's part of the continuum. The persecution of Christians by Muslims has always been there from the very beginning, because most of Muslim lands are in Christian territory. And that's why so many of them ended up converting to Islam. And you have small minorities, and that's why they disappeared in some areas. So the Copts, for example, who used, the word Coptic, for example, just to give you an idea of how infused with Christianity it is, the word Egyptian, that's the Greek word, which is Aegyptos. And when the Arab conquerors of Egypt came, they took the word for native Egyptian, Aegyptos, but they just took the middle syllable, Gipt. And that became transliterated into Copt for us. Yeah. So it just means Egyptian.
Yeah.
But it means Christian because all the Egyptians were Christians. So Copt means Christian and Egyptian. Anyway, so they went from being the majority, or almost 100%, to now they're 10% because of 14 centuries of discrimination and, sporadic persecution, which is well documented, by the way. Anyone who's interested can get a book called A Sword Over the Nile, which is, it's not my book, but it's really great because it's based on the primary sources of what happened to the Christians of Egypt. Anyway, what's interesting is if you fast forward, during the attacks on Christians of the Middle East, Egypt, Syria, everywhere, it was, again, attacks on churches, attacks on their persons, of course, extorting money from them as a form of jizya, tribute, enslaving their women and children, etc. That's still going on. Okay. And it's in all.
Sorry. So people in the chat, I'm just eating like a salmon poke bowl. So it's just like salmon sashimi with like brown rice and greens. So there you go. Nothing fancy.
All the Islamic worlds to different degrees. Maybe you've heard of a group called Open Doors. So it's a humanitarian Christian international organization, which has been around for decades. And every year they publish a report. It's called the World Watch List, and it ranks the 50 worst nations to be a Christian, where Christians are most persecuted. And I write about it every year, and habitually 37, 38 of the 50 are Muslim nations. And I mean, that to me is.
He went by. You know what? The podcast guy went by way too quickly on that. So why don't we look that up? What was it? World Watch List. Let's see here. Ooh, okay. So Raymond Ibrahim was saying that the vast majority of countries where Christians are persecuted are Muslim. Let's check that theory out, because one thing that the jihadis and Islamists like to say is that, the religion of peace, supports everyone. And yet that's not the case at all. So let's fact check what Raymond Ibrahim was saying, because I know a lot of people who know nothing about this are going to be triggered because they're going to think that what he's saying is bigoted or Islamophobic. But here we go. Okay, so this is World Watch List 2025. The World Watch List is Open Doors' annual ranking of the 50 countries where Christians face the most extreme persecution. Explore each country profile, download the detailed dossiers for in-depth information about following Jesus in the most dangerous places. You'll learn more about Christian persecution and discover how to stand with your brothers and sisters in prayer and action. So as you can see, this is the map here. The map is very, very similar to what the map of Islamic conquest looks like, right? Like you basically got the Middle East, Northern Africa, and of course, some communist countries, communist Muslim countries as well, like China. And oh, look, of course, there is the Islamic Republic of Iran, which is the number 9 worst list. So why don't we take out these countries? Okay, so here are um, the worst countries. How does this show up on? Wait, does this show up okay on the live stream? Let me check my YouTube here and see how this shows up because I just maximized um my screen on the laptop, but I don't know if this is showing up properly on. Okay. No, it's showing up. Okay, so you guys can see everything. All right. Okay, I just checked on my phone to make sure that you guys can see the live stream. So at number 1 is North Korea. North Korea is the worst for the persecution of Christians. Oh, look, number 2 is Somalia. Isn't that interesting? You know what, guys? At some point, I will be doing a live stream and possibly several videos about what is happening in the United States with, all the Somalians who are defrauding American taxpayers. However, isn't it interesting? Here's the interesting thing. Isn't it interesting? And I can't see your comments because I'm live screened on, like, I'm widescreen on the this website here, so I'll check your comments after. But isn't it interesting how Somalia is the top country, aside from North Korea, by the way? Somalia is the top country for the persecution of Christians, and yet all these Somalis are coming to America, which is basically a Christian country, and they've defrauded America out of what, like over $8 billion? I don't know. Something to think about, right? Okay, yeah, Yemen, Libya, Sudan, Eritrea, Nigeria. Yes, of course, because of the Nigerian genocide, the Muslim genocide of Christians in Nigeria, something that I have spoken about on my live stream. Oh, look, Pakistan. Yeah, Pakistan. You have, like, the horror stories I hear from Pakistani Christians about how they're treated by Muslim Pakistanis. It's horrific. Iran, 100%, of course. Iran is there because the Islamic dictatorship took over in 1979. They've been persecuting all of us, right? All of us since then, regardless of religion. Afghanistan, India, that's interesting. India, I didn't know that. India, India needs to do better. I did not know that. Um, that's not good. Saudi Arabia, of course. Saudi Arabia, Myanmar, because it's a communist country. Mali, yep, Mali, China. Oh yeah, Maldives for sure. Yeah, Iraq, Syria, Algeria, Burkina Faso, Morocco. There we go. Bangladesh, Mauritania, Uzbekistan, Cuba. Right. So as you can see, guys, the countries that are persecuting here, let me minimize this so I can actually see the comments now here because I haven't been able to see any of the comments. So as you can see, the countries that persecute Christians are either Muslim countries or they are communist. So yeah, it's it's tough, right? And before anyone says, "Oh, like Goldie is, like attacking all these countries," listen, I call out Iran all the time. Like I literally, like, I call out Iran all the time. That is, where I'm from. I should actually do a video on the effort that Iranians go to call out Islamic terrorists and radicals from Iran. Like, you guys have no idea. This didn't even make it into mainstream media, but just recently, the Iranian community from around the world and even inside of occupied Iran they banded together and they raised so much awareness about this Iranian woman who was a university professor at I can't remember what university it was, but she was a university professor there. I don't know. I think she was like head of Middle East studies or something. Like her name is like Shirin, I don't know, something. And Iranians raised so much awareness about her because she was out there promoting the Islamic Republic. She was putting out like anti Semitic nonsense. And she was, attacking Israel and attacking Iranians fighting against the Islamic Republic. And she was actually hired within like some university in the United States. I can't remember now which one it was. But Iranians put so much effort into raising awareness about this that we just got the news a few days ago that she was actually fired from her university academia position because of the fact that she was promoting the Islamic Republic. So we Iranians, we are very, very good at self regulating our community, and we will call out the Islamic extremists within our community. And um, a lot of you don't know this, but um, I have a lot of support from Iranians in occupied Iran who either follow me on X or on YouTube or on Instagram. And they are the silent majority who watch me, support me, share my videos. And you don't really hear from them because, you know, many of them um, they don't feel comfortable speaking in English or typing in English. So that's why sometimes like in the YouTube live chat you'll see people typing in Farsi. um, but the reason that they follow me and support me is because even though they might not be comfortable speaking in English or typing in English, they understand, like the vast majority of Iranians understand English, right? So even Iranians in occupied Iran. So, but they follow me, they support me. And that's because everything that I say, everything that I share with you, this isn't just my personal opinion. I'm pretty much sharing the views of the vast majority of Iranians. And I can tell you right now that we as a community, we are very, very good at self regulating. So, given the fact that I have been on the scene for like, I don't know, what, over 10 years, um, every single Iranian has probably already done like a background check on me to see like, whether or not I'm affiliated with the Islamic regime or any other like, groups or whatever. And, of course, I've passed because I'm not affiliated with any of them. But all that to say, if for all of you, everyone who's not Iranian, I can tell you right now that if anything that I was saying about Iran or Islamic terrorism or what Iranians think was untrue, you guys would know about it because I would have been canceled by now. So um, that's why we Iranians are very, very good at self-regulating. But you guys, you don't hear about it because it never makes it into the mainstream media. But yeah, like I'm happy to um I'll make a video about that American university professor who was, Iranian, and she was basically a terrorist, right? So I'll make a video about her. So all that to say, um I call out everyone equally. I don't care where you're from. If you're a jihadi, if you're an Islamic terrorist, I will call you out. And in fact, um, if you're an Islamic terrorist from Iran, I will go above and beyond to call you out and expose you because it is my responsibility as an Iranian to point out who the bad apples are to the rest of the world. So just wanted to put that out there. So yeah, I treat everyone equally, but for the Islamic terrorists who are Iranian, oh, they get special treatment. They get special treatment, and um, have they all have a place in hell waiting for them. All right, end of my little rant there, but there you go. So, this is the list that Raymond Ibrahim was talking about when he was speaking about the World Watch list of the top 50 countries where Christians are the most persecuted. And yeah, the top 50 countries are either communist or Muslim. The vast majority of the countries where Christians are persecuted are Muslim, right? So the next time someone says, oh, Islam, religion of peace, or the next time these radical jihadis come to Christian countries and complain about persecution, maybe instead, in response, you should pull up this list and be like, oh, that's very interesting. You want to talk about being persecuted in Christian countries? What about the millions of Christians who are being persecuted in Muslim countries, and all of you are denying it? Right? There you go. All right, let's continue.
Telling, right? It's like almost every Muslim nation, there is a kind of Christian persecution. Some are worse than others. Okay, now we can go to Africa. That's the worst. Sub-Saharan Africa. That, according to a lot of human rights groups, there's a genocide in Nigeria, and I follow it closely. And I think every week I have to read about dozens of Christians being killed by Muslims. And of course, the media they tell you, no, this is about climate, change. One group is being pushed out and they're attacking another group.
Oh, they actually do that.
What?
The
Yeah,
media are actually
yes,
saying
they
it's
do
about
that.
climate change.
Actually, yeah, and they don't tell you that the ones being pushed out are all Muslims and the ones being killed are all Christians. Okay, no, they actually do that.
So what's happening then in Nigeria?
You have Muslim groups. First, you had the terrorist group called Boko Haram, which means Western education is a sin, and all they've been doing is
Boko Haram, so yeah, haram is sin, so haram. Um, Boko Haram is also funded by the Muslim Brotherhood. Remember, the Muslim Brotherhood is a terrorist organization that has been banned in several Middle Eastern countries, and now more recently has been banned in Florida and Texas.
attacking and killing Christians. But now you have what's called the Fulani, they're herdsmen, okay, who live and they graze their cattle, and they're attacking the Christians who are sedentary, okay, and they're just butchering and killing them and taking over their land, and of course also engaging in destroying their churches and other the hallmarks of attacks on Christianity that emphasize that there's an ideological component. But if you talk to the professionals and the media, it has nothing to do with religion. It's climate change, because the pastoral Fulani are being pushed out and they need more land, so they attack these. But for some reason, they only attack Christians, never Muslim sedentary areas.
Yeah, and how exactly does climate change force them to kill and butcher?
Yeah, exactly.
So where's the
Yeah.
motivation?
No,
exactly?
I remember I think it was the Irish president who came out and made a big scene about, no, this is climate change. Don't talk about Islam.
Wait, so someone said I'm just like the FBI. No, I'm not like the FBI. I'm actually more like Mossad. So yeah, just yeah, I'm more like Mossad.
It's Islam means peace, and this was like a year ago, and it's like,
Mostly peaceful climate change.
yeah. And then the next day, Muslims attack a church in Nigeria and kill like 50 people. And all of a sudden that too is not about religion. I mean, I've really followed this, and the acrobatics they play to just make you think this isn't about religion are amazing, even though it's so obvious about I once quoted a black nun from Nigeria, who's like, it's hard for us not to believe this is about religion when they're dressed in black, screaming Allah Akbar and break the cross, and you tell me it's about climate change. So
He makes a very good point, and if you go back and if you look at my live streams where I speak about the Nigerian genocide, the Muslim genocide of Christians in Nigeria, that's exactly what I say. I also mentioned the same thing in Sudan. I'm like, like exactly what he said. No, like normal person, like, okay, so let me rephrase this. If the issue was about climate change, right? Climate change, why are Muslims going around yelling Allahu Akbar while they are murdering Christians, right? Like, how is that anything to do with climate change? It's literally jihad. That's been the pattern of jihad for 1400 years. And yet they want to try and gaslight Nigerians and the rest of the world into thinking that this is about climate change. Like, it's nonsense. It's insane. And this is a kind of gaslighting um, that we have to deal with.
That's Nigeria, but in
Yeah,
sub-Saharan
but
Africa.
in Nigeria, do we have a sense of the death toll?
I've seen various reports, and it apparently got really, really bad starting around 2009, and has been going on and off. But I would say, maybe 70,000. Yeah, just butchered.
And what has the Christian response been to that?
The Nigerian Christian, or
Nigerian or
Oh wait, someone said Aloha Akbar means God is greater than Jesus and Moses. If you don't know that, you're probably non-Arab. I am 100% non-Arab. I'm Iranian. And yeah, Aloha Akbar means Allah is great. It doesn't mean God is great, because God, that's a different word in Arabic. That's ilah. Allah Allah is the name of the Muslim God. So when they say Allahu Akbar, what they're saying is Allah is greater than all the other gods.
the greater
the
Christian?
greater Christian response is it's not happening, and there's nothing to see here. Black lives apparently only matter if they're not Christian. That it's really it's one of those things where if it was the opposite, if this was, let's say, Muslims being killed by Christians, this would be on the news nonstop. Everyone would know about it, you know. But such as it is, and again, to give you,
Why do you think that the Christians don't care about this?
I mean, I think to a great degree, a lot of them don't know. So they're basically just misled by the media that they trust. Fox News isn't going to talk about this either, right? So for whatever reason, this isn't a topic for them.
But I'd have hoped that like the Church of England or the leaders of the
Yeah,
churches who
yeah,
do know about it,
right.
they absolutely know about it, would be every single day.
But a
Every
lot of
single
them,
church service, they'd be
but
praying about it.
also a lot of these churches don't want to antagonize Muslims, and they're more excited and more proud about holding hands with a Muslim imam and showing their wonderful, ecumenicism reach out. So a lot of them don't want to. Pope Francis, he writes encyclicals about this and that. How about Christians being butchered left and right? You know, any word on that? Nope. We don't want to talk. So again, you have to understand that amongst Christians of all denominations, there's this political correctness, this need to like make Muslims look good, and et cetera, et cetera. So
Oh, Keith, thank you for the support. So Keith says, I am from the UK. Have you seen what is going on in my country? Yes, Keith, I have seen what is going on in the UK. It is incredibly scary. I'm actually working on gathering some videos and information so that I can either do a live stream or make a video about how the current government in the UK is working on a definition of anti-Muslim hostility. UK is a nightmare right now. Like, UK is pretty much conquered, and yeah, like I have a lot to say about the UK, but terrible times right now. I feel like freedom of speech is gone in the UK. Like you guys just don't even have the ability to um speak out and criticize. So yeah, no, I'm very very familiar with what's going on in the UK. I completely sympathize. Listen, Canada's pretty much almost there. I'm in Canada. We're almost there. Like maybe like one step behind. So yeah, but I'll definitely speak about that as well in future live streams. And welcome to my channel, and thank you for the support. Appreciate that.
they don't want to talk about it. It's if you talk about Christian persecution, you totally overthrow the narrative that they've been trying to build. Because, if you talk about Muslims attacking Israel, okay, it kind of makes sense because they're the underdog, they're angry, they're fighting back, okay. But if you look at the Muslim world and you realize Muslims are dominant there and they're persecuting their tiny minorities simply because of religious differences, because they're not Muslims, then you start realizing, okay, so Muslims are just intolerant. And maybe this isn't about what's happening in Israel. Maybe this is just something among them. So that I've noticed, and I've been following this and writing about it a lot. Muslim persecution of Christians has been one of those most no topics. We don't want to go there because there's no rationale to it. Muslims attack Israel. Muslim bomb Western cities. Oh, they have grievances. Oh, this. Oh, that. But if you find it's an institutionalized discrimination and persecution of minorities simply because they're not Muslim, how do you get around that? Well, the way you get around it is you don't talk about it.
And you put that back to that Quran that you cited earlier about the people of the book. And
yeah. That's one of the verses. Fight the people of the book, Quran 929. But there's others in the Hadith telling you how to treat Christians. If you see a Christian or Jew, you have to push them against the wall. Don't say salam, don't say hello to Christians and Jews. All sorts of things. You have to hate them, even though you have to live with them, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, it all traces back to these scriptural injunctions.
So we've covered Nigeria, and you've written about what's going on in Congo. That's also come up in the news this year.
Yeah, I know. Well, I think a month ago or so, maybe 2 months ago, they entered a church and found 70 decapitated Christians. Okay, and it was by an Islamic terror group, which, funny enough, goes by its name is something democracy. Okay, it's part of this group called I forget, but if you look it up, something democracy, and they're a rebel group, and it sounds like they're leftist, and maybe they have leftist elements, but they also have a jihadist wing who does what they decapitated 70 Christians. Again, if you look into it, if you dig in, you're going to see the hallmarks. Oh, this is about ideology. It's about hatred for Christians. Okay. The narrative, no, this is just some rebel group, and those are just poor innocent victims that were caught up in the war, and it gets very, it's very hygienic, and we don't talk about the religious element. Okay, if you're following the mainstream media, all right, but if you look into it as I do, and I look at all the sources, it's very clear what's going on.
Is it worse? You said earlier it's worse in Africa.
Right.
Is it worse in Africa because that's the continent where most Christians and Muslims are living side by side?
That's a good question, and I think that is part of it.
Well, I guess Europe more probably.
Yeah, but I mean, for example, Nigeria is literally 50-50. It's 50% Christian, 50% Muslim. And isn't that interesting that it's like a full-blown civil war essentially going on over there? There's this idea about Muslim populations as it grows, and this is sort of historically demonstrable. But if it's a small population, let's say 1%, which is like America, they're just going to be sort of vocal, kind of from a my rights type thing, like leftist groups, let's say. But when they become like, let's say 10%, then like in Europe, in certain countries and cities, then you get a lot of criminality, and you get these enclaves and no-go zones. So I've heard by various sources. And then when it grows, let's say 50%, now you have a war, you have a full jihad. Okay. When it keeps growing and now it's 70-80%, then the infidel is completely suppressed. Look at Saudi Arabia. You can't even have a church or anything there. Or they're suppressed, tremendously. So it's very unwavering. And for Europe, it's unfortunate because these numbers, I saw a Pew poll say like in 2050, in Germany, Muslims are going to be like 40% of the population. I mean, at that point, it's going to be like Nigeria. It's going to be a war, because why not?
I mentioned Syria. There's mixed reporting here, so I'm hesitant to say that.
I am too. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you agree with my position?
It's very confusing what's really going on. Okay. And sometimes you hear it's Christian, sometimes you hear it's not. It's Alawis, and it's right. We have to wait for this smoke to settle, kind of.
Yeah. Well, I encourage listeners and viewers to go to your webpage where you have all of this. I mean, I couldn't quite believe it when I went on, because you've been documenting these attacks on Christians for many
since
years.
2012, I think. No, it's 2011. Sorry.
Okay, so well over a decade, and as far as I found, and including Christian websites, this is the most thorough documentation.
Thank you. Yeah.
And it's pretty shocking stuff, and perhaps something that we can go into on another conversation. But Raymond, before we close out, we've covered so much, and we've swept through 1400 years of history, and couldn't obviously possibly complete every sentence. But is there anything you want to add before we close this out?
We have a new member. Okay, so welcome, Bob Mander. Thank you for joining Goldie's Gang. Thank you for your support. Really appreciate that. I hope you're enjoying the live stream. And just to let you know, I do members only live streams and after parties, but those only happen during the day. So I do my like usual the Goldie Show podcast at 12 noon Eastern. That goes from 12 noon until 2 p.m. And then at 2 p.m., I do the members only after party. So, welcome so much. Thank you for the support. I hope you're enjoying the live stream. And it's great to have you on board. And I look forward to chatting with you in the members only live streams. Oh my gosh, we have another member. Whoa. All right, Mort, thank you. Welcome to Goldie's Gang. Um Oh wait, Michael says Goldie's Gang would be an awesome name for a band. Guys, you know what? So I initially started out with Goldie's Gang. Oh no, what happened to my internet? Where is it? Um, I initially started out with Goldie's Gang, but now I'm thinking of changing the membership name. I'll do a post about it in the members only message board, and I'll get your opinions on. Like I'll do a poll. But I'm gonna see if I should keep the name of members to Goldie's Gang, or if I should change the name to The Infidels. So there you go. I'll do a post on the members only message board. And of course, all you members can decide whether or not you want to stick with Goldie's Gang or if you want to switch to The Infidels. I'll leave it up to you. Oh, wow. Oh my gosh, we have another member. What's up, Canadian? I love that. I love that. Welcome to Goldie's Gang. Thank you for the support. Really appreciate that. Um, you know, love Canadians, love Canada. Of course, there you see, I am a proud Canadian. So, what's up, Canada? All right, let's get into the final few minutes here. This is interesting. Okay, so Mort is saying the Golden Infidels. Okay. All right. So more what I'll do is okay, so I'll make a poll. I'll see if people want Goldie's Gang, the Infidels, the Golden Infidels, or other. So I'll put that in the members only message board after this live stream. I'll do a poll and then let's see what happens. So but yeah, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for the support. Really do appreciate that. And welcome. Guys, we're gonna have a lot of fun. Like I'm just kind of getting warmed up. I'm just getting started, but there's gonna be a lot more members only perks as the channel grows and I kind of, get into my groove and everything, right?
About everything we've discussed. Any important ingredients you think I might have skimmed over too quickly?
No, I just, to cap it off is just really to emphasize that there's such a gap in people's knowledge, and it's by design. This isn't just ignorance because whatever. It's been for decades building up where information, like I said, fake history, which is more potent in many ways than fake news, has been like accelerating. And so people really need to educate themselves and don't look to the professionals because, they're not going to do it because a lot of them maybe even agree with me, but they have a career and they don't want to lose their job. You know what I mean? So a lot of that. So I think you just.
Okay, Bob, you're terrible. Goldie's Mossad. Come on, guys, we have to at least have some sort of semblance of pretending, right? Like we can't give away all of our Mossad secrets. We can't make it too obvious that we're Mossad. So I don't know about that, but I mean it is a good suggestion.
Have to independently educate yourself. about the truth,
Yeah.
about the history, and about the doctrine of Islam. And if you do that, it'll all fall into play. And I'm not trying to promote anger or hatred. My thing is, I believe the more we have truth, the more we can act on it, and the better. But if truth is suppressed, then there's no remedy, because you can't fix something until you acknowledge the issue.
Yeah.
And if you just let it fester and boil and simmer over, well, that's just even worse. So the number one thing I would just tell people to objectively educate themselves on these topics, and I think everything else will fall into place.
Yeah. You've mentioned a couple of your books. Are there any others that you want listeners and viewers to know about? And where can they find you online?
Right.
Your social media and website?
So my website is basically my name, RaymondIbrahim.com, and there you'll get all my articles, my videos. I make YouTube videos too. You can see me there, and I have social media links to the ones, even though most of them I'm shadow banned on because nobody sees anything that I post, they tell me. But the books, I would say, if you want to do what I just said, educate yourself, the number one book that I wrote would be Sword and Scimitar, 14 Centuries of War Between Islam, because I give the bare bone theology and doctrine that you need to understand about Islam without going into every detail. And then I give the history that we just discussed, and I really document it. And I go all the way up until the present and show the parallels. So I would, that would be the book that I would primarily suggest for anyone.
Yeah. Raymond, I would like to say it was a pleasure speaking with you, but frankly, it's
It's a jarring experience.
It's been hard, brutal history, and particularly what's going on.
That was kind of rude. Like, did I misinterpret that, or was that like just British rudeness? Because he's like, I wish I could say it was nice speaking to you, but that was uncomfortable. I don't know. Did I misinterpret that, or like I felt that was very, very rude. Okay. I don't know. I didn't like that. He should have said it's a pleasure. I mean, just because you have a conversation that is difficult for you to have because you want to be politically correct and someone's taking you out of your comfort zone, doesn't mean that you should say it wasn't a pleasure speaking to you. I don't know. Was he being sarcastic? All right. Let's go back and listen to this again, because I don't want to judge. Geez, I'm like right at the end too. Okay, so I'll go back a little bit. I don't know. You guys am I reading too much into this? Because I thought that was rude. Maybe I'm just not understanding like the British commentary here because I'm Canadian, but let's see. Okay.
One thing I would just tell people to objectively educate themselves on these topics, and I think everything else will fall into place.
Yeah. You've mentioned a couple of your books. Are there any others that you want listeners and viewers to know about? And where can they find you online?
Right.
Your social media and website?
So my website is basically my name.
Okay, all the Brits are telling me that it's humor. Okay, I will accept that. I will accept British humor because honestly, like, I don't even understand half of British humor. The only British humor that I really understand is Monty Python and Mr. Bean, and that's it. Like I've seen British sitcoms where apparently something funny is said, and then everyone's, like you hear like this the laugh track in the background, and I'm just like sitting there and I'm like, I have no idea what happened right now. I don't understand why this is funny. So I will take your word on that he was meant to be sarcastic.
RaymondIbrahim.com, and there you'll get all my articles, my videos. I make YouTube videos too. You can see me there, and I have social media links to the ones, even though most of them I'm shadow banned on because nobody sees anything that I post, they tell me. But the books, I would say, if you want to do what I just said, educate yourself, the number one book that I wrote would be Sword and Scimitar, 14 Centuries of War Between Islam, because I give the bare bone theology and doctrine that you need to understand about Islam without going into every detail. And then I give the history that we just discussed, and I really document it. And I go all the way up until the present and show the parallels. So I would, that would be the book that I would primarily suggest for anyone.
Yeah. Raymond, I would like to say it was a pleasure speaking with you, but frankly, it's
a jarring experience.
It's been hard, brutal history, and particularly what's going on right now is really.
Well, try being me sometime.
Raymond Ibrahim, thank you so much for speaking with me. And
my pleasure.
We must do it again.
I enjoyed it. Yes, thank you.
Islamist attack after Islamist attack.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining me. This was a very, very interesting live stream. I learned a lot from the documentary, but more so, all of you in the YouTube chat. I don't know if it's something in the air. I don't know if Christmas is around the corner. I don't know if it's because you guys are drinking something. No idea. But the YouTube chat was definitely um, way more lively and entertaining than usual. So I did definitely appreciate that, and I appreciated all of your comments. I enjoyed interacting with you guys. And oh, we have another super chat here. So Johnny says, "Have a good night. Got to go to work in the morning. Going to Catholic Mass." Oh my gosh. Going to Catholic Masad. Give my love to Iran. Well, thank you so much. See you in the morning. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you so much, Johnny, for your support. And have fun at Catholic Masad. So yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. So for those of you who have just tuned into my live streams, just to let you know, the evening live streams, a little bit more chill. We're just kind of watching documentaries, learning stuff. Gives me an opportunity to be more interactive with all of you in the YouTube live chat. My daily live streams that I do at 12 noon Eastern, those ones are definitely more serious, a little bit less interaction with the chat because I'm focused more on having, sharing information and educating and speaking. So, during the days, I'm definitely much more serious. You're not going to see me laughing at everything because that's when I have like my, politician face on. But, in the evenings is when I'm, a little bit more chill. So there you go. Jane, thank you so much for the super sticker. I hope you enjoyed the live stream. Always great to see you as well. Yes, okay, so I just want to say this. I get so many comments from people who are like, you look like Donna from Suits with black hair. I don't see it. I don't see it. Like, I don't think I look like her at all whatsoever. But sure, I don't know. Anyways, so and for all of the members, keep an eye out for the members only message board. I will put a post there to see if we want to keep the member group name as Goldie's Gang, or if we want to change it to the Infidels, or I don't know, something else. So stay tuned for that. Thanks everyone for joining. Thank you for your support. I had a fantastic evening. Yeah, as always, Payande Iran, Javid Shah. I'll see you guys tomorrow.